Yo, thanks for the likes, Dargon. Hope you're doing well, bro. Hope your day is good today. The weather's beautiful here in Vancouver today, nice and sunny. Hope you're doing well, bro. I've had a really tough past couple days. I'm glad you're good, man. I'm glad you're okay. I'm good. I've been good, but I had some crazy experience coming up on a kid who I've known for a really long time. Basically lost in the streets, man. It's a really sad situation. I'm 33, and this kid's he's like 25 now, 26. But I've known him since he was like 12. Young prodigy BMXer, and he's lost to the meth and the drugs on the street, man. He had 2 weeks ago. He had a police report filed from his parents saying that he was missing, and like 3 days ago I found him. I was the one who found him in the streets. Absolutely brutal. I spent all night with him, like till 4 in the morning, witnessing his lifestyle and everything. I'm in the streets, but I've never been like that involved with it. Like he fully gave me the rundown and saw him walking up at Hastings, getting his plug, doing the work that he needs to do. He's got no money, so he's basically like flipping garbage and doing degenerate things for money. Yeah, man, it was so sad. I don't know. That's the only reason I bring it up so casually is because my mind is obsessed over this. Like for 3, 4 days, I have not thought about anything except for him, man. It's really most disturbing thing I think I've witnessed in my life to see someone so gone. You know, he's a good kid, good smart kid. Also, just meth is a crazy drug. The way that it takes a hold of your personality and the way that his like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just completely flipped upside down. He hasn't showered or had a meal or slept in 14 days, you know? So the kid's just gone. It's just disturbing, super disturbing. Throughout the night, once I found him, I spent a bunch of time with him and then got a couple of our other close friends to come meet us up in the alley. And slowly but surely, it kind of leaked on the internet that we'd found him because, like, he was, like I said, he's a prodigy as a kid. So everyone in the BMX community knows him, when the police report got sent, everyone shared the police report. So when I found him, that got kind of spread around social media too. And throughout the night, between like midnight and 3 in the morning, people started showing up, giving him blankets, giving him jackets, food, offering him a place to stay, offering him jobs. Some people giving him like tough love, telling him he's got to get off the street, but none of it worked. 30, 40, there's probably like 20, 30 different people showing up at the skate park 3 in the morning trying to help him, and none of it worked. Even the guys, some people showed up and basically enabled it too, like came, drank with them, brought him a beer, sat and smoked, not hard stuff with them, but smoked their own whatever with them. None of it helped. None of it worked. Didn't seem to matter what strategy, the tough love, the enabling love, the practical utilitarian love, it all ended up in the same place, which was everyone else went home and he was still left on the street. He's got this weird sense of confidence. He's in complete denial. Very intense sense of confidence. What's up, Cartesian? How you doing today, bro?
Yeah, can you explain what this stuff you were saying about gender is a subset of sex? So, like, can you explain that whole thing?
Yeah. Do you want to hear? I'll put the background on. Maybe we can read it. You could probably help me with this, actually. Um, there. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah. So you're saying, okay, what is it saying? So, if someone is in, if something is a sex, wait, X is an element of S subset of G.
Proper
This
sub.
is
Prop. Prop. Is that symbol mean subset or proper subset?
No, well, yeah, it does mean it means proper
Okay,
subset.
proper
I'm
subset.
trying
That's what
to
I thought. I was
trying to.
trying to get the symbols down, and fucking ChatGPT gave me so many whack symbols. Like here, the ChatGPT was like making up its own symbols. And I was like, what the fuck? That's definitely not a proper subset, but that is the right one.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's one way to really clarify it, and it might be the case that sex isn't a proper subset of gender, but like let's just say um, phenotype, like genotype and phenotype would be another relation that we could kind of draw in set theory, and we would say genotype I think would be a proper subset of phenotype, right? As in all the elements inside genotype are um, part of the set, right? Contained in the set of phenotype.
Wait, is that even is that? Hold on, is that true?
That might not be true, actually. That might not be true. See, I'm trying to work through these concepts as well, bro. I'm not. I'm this genuine kind of
No,
question,
I
you know.
think phenotypes and genotypes are just like different categories. I don't think there's like one is a subset of the other, and but that's what I want to say here. It's like sexes and genders are much the same. They're just like different categories, and the like male and female are not genders. Like so the the category of sexes is not a subset of the category of genders because male
Totally,
and females are not genders.
totally.
So
You're on it. Yeah, I had a very similar criticism yesterday that they should be two separate circles, basically with no overlap. Would that be closer to what you're saying?
yeah, exactly. If trans is an incongruence between sex and gender, then trans is invalid. What? What does that mean?
Well, I'm trying to find now. You're pressing against the claim that it's a proper subset, so you might be. You, I think I might actually concede that with a bit more thought. I've been thinking about it for about 24 hours now about the possibility of it being separate. So it's like a new claim to my mind, but which I sympathize with. But in this case, if it was a proper subset, right? I'm having trouble seeing how there could be like a I'm labeling incongruence as synonymous with like a contradiction or like a falsity.
Yeah, if
So
you're saying something like if you're saying something like if the sexes are just genders, then you can't well, sorry. So what do you mean by incongruence? Would that just mean you have a
right.
gender but you don't have a sex or
No, it would be, or well, that might be actually fall in that category. I would just say though that it would be like a true, it would be like a contradiction. So like, yeah, there would be a
contradiction of
cat.
what the
Well, that's the problem. I can't find one. If it's a proper subset, then all the elements in the category of sex would also be included in the category or set of gender. So there'd be no, in other words, there's no biological indicator that would contradict your sex or your gender. Sorry, there's no biological indicator whether you have a certain reproductive organ, certain chromosomal
All
makeup.
right, I gotta go. I'll talk about this later.
I'd love to talk to you about it more, Cartesian. Thanks for your time, man. I hope you have a wonderful day, bro. Um, For real though, I want to talk to you about this because I think you could inform my opinion a lot. So I'm willing to sort this out with you. Um, Sage, I'm not being pedantic here, but there's a big difference between subset and proper subset. Oh yeah, you're coming up. Sick. What's up, Sage? How you doing today?
I'm all right. How
What's
are
up?
you?
I'm good. I'm good. Okay, subset, and this is just me being pedantic. I'm just kind of learning about set theory now. Subset apparently means like they're equivalent. So if sex was a subset of gender, then the circles would be the same circle.
Um, I don't think that um, that would it would mean that they were equivalent because there could be multiple subsets within a set, couldn't there? Like
Uh,
within the
th-
set of whole numbers, there could be odds and evens, and those would both be
yes,
subsets of whole
you're
numbers, right?
you're just using the word. I think I could be wrong here
I don't
too,
know
but I
set
think
theory at all. So
yeah, you're using the word subset like proper subset. The word that you're looking for is proper subset. Subset means equivalent. If sex was a subset of gender, the circles would like technically in set theory the circles would be the same. Subset actually means equivalent in set theory, which is weird. A proper subset is what you're looking for, which is like a smaller set inside of the other one, right? Not that it really matters. I'm just being
That's what I mean. I
proper
thought
subset.
they were. I thought that was the same thing.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about set theory.
I'm
Well, I know
learning.
a
I'm
little bit
learning
about
too.
set theory,
I'm just
but
learning
only
about
from
it too.
TikTok. Have
It's
you
a
have you checked out
powerful.
that creator that I suggested yet?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, oh, what's the name? Fuck. Who did you suggest again? I've had a few references
I
now,
can't
but
remember her name.
yeah, it was.
Badger
But
or something. Or
yes, yes, yes. It was a while ago
it's
now,
not.
but yes.
It's not Badger, but something like that. Yeah, she has a
Yeah.
lot of good content on the history of money and stuff.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. I gotta look back at her again. That was a while ago. Um, this whole thing of like subsets and proper subsets seems to be a powerful way to like talk to people. Even though this is a really controversial topic, I've had a lot of success. I've had a lot of success like de-escalating the conversation through the scope of set theory, I think.
Stephen Mathematics.
Yes, love him. We talk a lot,
Yeah,
but he wouldn't have.
he
I
does
gave him this.
set
He
theory
wouldn't
a
give me
lot.
He wouldn't give me his opinion on this. But it's again, it's somewhat controversial. But I did just have Cartesian up here. I was interested to hear his opinion. I've had several pushbacks on this drawing because of what Cartesian said, like that they're two separate categories entirely, so the sets wouldn't
Well,
overlap at all.
I think I might be able to give an example of why they're not properly a subset, or why they're not subsets of each other.
Okay.
Like if you have androgen sensitivity, you would have the chromosomes, so you would be sexed as a female if they did like chromosome analysis, but your gender would not be female. Your gender would be male.
Well, under these semantics, male and female aren't even categories of gender, which is you could. It's I'm
That's
not.
why I said sex.
But you're saying so. You're saying they could have discrepancy in their sex, not even related to their gender identity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like
that's
like
true.
that would mean that those people or intersex people might not be I can't think of the word right now. They would be an incongruence between
Right.
genetics and sex.
Yes. So that I think might be a possibility. Yeah.
But would that necessarily make it invalid?
No. No. You could have somewhat of an incongruence between your sex characteristics. That's not invalid to claim. That's not
So
invalid.
then that would mean like the whole premise of this gender being or sex being a subset of gender to also be not correct then,
Why is
wouldn't
that?
it?
Why maybe
Because
I didn't follow though. Why do you say that?
so in the case that I'm saying, your genetics, your genetic makeup would be the larger set, right? And the subset would be sex, and there could be an incongruence between those,
Yes. Yep. But what you
right?
wouldn't want to do.
But I don't think that
here's-
would make it invalid.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. What you wouldn't want to do is make genetics bigger than sex. As soon as it's a subset, right? Or well, in this case, a proper subset is the actual term. But as soon as it's a proper subset, you're saying all the elements inside of that set are contained within the broader set. So with genetics, if you made genetics broader,
Either one that you want to make bigger, it still follows that there would be an incongruence,
well,
because there are people who have the traits of one but the genetic makeup of the other.
But if the categories of the sets include that difference, so the circle being bigger than the smaller circle shows that there's potential for a difference. See? Without incongruence. Because because what you wouldn't want to say, right, is that someone with that chromosomal makeup and maybe an incongruence between their chromosome makeup and their reproductive organs, that they somehow have a limited gender identity. What you wouldn't want to do is say, oh, you have XX chromosomes, therefore you're this gender identity. You want to still give that person access to any and all gender identities, right? No matter what their chromosomal makeup. See what I'm saying?
I'm saying gender identity here. We're replacing the two groups with chromosome
Genetics.
makeup.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
genetic, yeah.
genetics and phenotype.
You would still have to then point to like a specific sex characteristics or genotype that contradicts with another one, right? Like, so you haven't quite done that. Like we like
So
in a
like,
sense.
like
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
my example was people who have XX, or is it XY chromosomes and androgen sensitivity would have the genetic makeup of a female, but the phenotype of a male.
Well, see, this is where it kind of gets a little bit tricky, because it's not necessarily binary, right? Our development as human and our sexual reproductive pathways aren't necessarily binary. They're bimodal. So like the male and female ends of the spectrum are just they're spectrum limits, right? But any, like, as far as an intersex person, they're falling on the spectrum of possibilities between male and female, right?
I don't think intersex is necessarily even applicable, because I'm speaking specifically about androgen sensitivity, and they're not considered an intersex.
Yeah, is that, yeah? What is that not? What is that? Well, what is that technically?
So
like you said,
androgen sensitivity is like if you have an XY chromosome, but you have your body doesn't react to the androgen, so you don't become a male inside the womb. You just stay female.
And you're saying so that person would be labeled a female biologically?
Yes.
Right. So then you're kind of showing that there's no incongruence. I mean, we would have to find a marker that I sympathize with what you're saying, that in the sense that they have
genetic
chromosome
would be
but the chromosomal makeup isn't the sole like indicator on sex characteristics. That's the problem. It falls on a huge spectrum of possibilities. You would have to show me an incongruence. You have to show me a chromosomal makeup that does not align with being labeled female. But there's no such thing. You just showed, well, you could have XX chromosomes or XY, but then there's other pathways that aren't related to your chromosomal makeup that might actually determine, even with those chromosomes, that you're actually male or you're actually female. Typically, those chromosomes can be assigned a certain way, but not every time.
But I could say the same thing about your diagram, is that typically people who are of a certain sex express their gender as matching that
exactly,
sex.
Exactly.
But
that's
not always.
Well, that's the whole thing about
Typically.
there not being a possibility for an incongruence. If you could show me a situation that always is the case, now we can say, oh, there's the incongruence right there, right? These categories don't align. But if there's an exception, well, then how could you show an incongruence? You see what I'm saying?
No, not really.
Well, let's go with like reproductive organs. We're not saying that every single person with a penis is a male, right? Or are you saying that?
I would say yes. That, well, not necessarily. It's difficult.
Right.
Because,
It's difficult because it's a spectrum,
because
right?
if a male goes through, some sort of horrific accident where they lose their part, are they still male?
Yes, of course they are. Yes, that's what I'm saying. They're male.
So it's not just down to.
Yeah, and it's not just down to chromosomes either. It's a bimodal spectrum, right? It's bimodal. It's not binary, but it does have two limits of possible development pathways, male and female, and then a bunch of in between, right? So that would show that like you can't really have like a contradiction if it's a spectrum, right? People could have the exceptions, like we're saying. And same with gender. People could have all the male characteristics and still identify as a woman. And there's no contradiction there. That's what this is saying. That's what gender ideology wants to say, right? Is that like really anyone, as long as they identify with it, could be a woman. As long as it's like actually true to their identity, it's not really it doesn't really matter what biology you have. You could identify as a woman. If that's the claim, then if that's sound and that's true, then there's also no claim for contradiction. There could be no indicator in biology that contradicts your gender identity either, right? Other than
So
how
are you
you
saying that,
identify.
are you saying you disagree with this diagram?
Well, I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah, this is an attempt for me to steelman my opposition. So yeah, typically I do find myself disagreeing with gender ideology, but the more I steelman their position, the more I am unconvinced by it. That's the issue I'm having. So I'm trying here my best to steelman the position, and yeah, I would say that it's unconvincing.
To steelman which position? In favor
That
of trans identity or against trans identity?
Well, see, I'm in favor of the fluidity of gender. I'm willing to stick with those semantics. So we can categorize sex and gender like the categories here. I'm willing to stick with those semantics. But then I'm not willing to make the move that there could be some sort of incongruence between gender and sex. Or we could go the other way, which is we separate the categories and say these things can allow for an incongruence, in which case I don't really see like the meaning behind, again, this word trans. So in either case, the word trans doesn't seem to have like a valid meaning to me.
I have to fill out some paperwork for work right now. Sorry.
Oh, dude, no, do not be sorry. No pressure at all. I'm just chilling too. But I wasn't going to do this topic today. Cartesian came up and he asked about it, and I was willing to talk to him about it, but I wasn't even going to do this topic today, honestly. I was looking for like chill conversation, but then you came up, so I'm down to keep talking about it. I'm down to keep it up here, but I'm also down to talk about whatever.
I don't really I don't understand trans identity, but that doesn't mean I can't accept them.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
true.
view on it.
Yeah, like and I'm not even going to say this is necessarily like incongruence with trans identity, but irrationality itself I sympathize with, right? Like if someone came up to me and made some ridiculous irrational claim, not related to gender at all, I'm just saying, I would still like love and sympathize with them and talk to them. I don't judge people. Like I would judge their claims from my own sanity.
I can tell you the thing that doesn't make sense to me about it is I don't understand like what it's like for another male to be a man. Like I don't understand what it's like for you to be a man. I can only understand what it's like for me to be a man as I identify myself. So like I don't know what it means to say that I feel like I am a woman. I have no idea what you feel.
I struggle.
As a man inside.
I struggle with the identity of being a man. Like I think I have masculine and feminine traits related to my biology, but as far as like, conforming to gender roles and norms, I struggle with that all the time. I'm very anti-conformity. I've also
I coined a term. I coined a term in a live a couple months ago, as I think that we should all be ig-genderists. Like, you know what an ig-theist is?
yeah.
because of the fact that everybody has different concepts of what gender is and what it means to them and what traits make someone good in that role. That I think that we should all be ig-genderists.
Yeah, I'm somewhat with you on that. Like, I think we all struggle somewhat with our identity related to gender. I don't think anyone has it figured out. People can hide behind their certain masks or whatever, but no, these terms are totally fluid. And how I dress on a daily basis changes, right? Like, how much I care about my appearance, how little I care, my hygiene, all those things fluctuate throughout my life. And I relate those to gender affirming care, right? Like, when I shave and I shower and I put on a nice suit, I feel a lot more, I feel very different than when I go in my work clothes out in the streets or whatever. And I relate these to affirmation, right? Like affirming my identity is very much related to how I dress, how I feel, how clean I am, all those kinds of things. Um, so I agree with you, and I think that this captures that concept, this diagram, right? That genders this. We could even open up the set of gender, that circle, and not have it closed, right? And just kind of like leave it open, assuming that like gender is this like broad scoping term that really includes any lots of different social concepts, etc. Right? But it's this idea that like I don't think we can find a sex characteristic that falls outside of gender, the label gender. Like, I can't point at my ears or like my feet or something in my biology and say, look, those are incongruent with my gender. Because someone else out there might have that same feature and identify and validly identify as the same gender as me, right? So I cannot invalidate anyone's identity according to gender. Therefore, where's the incongruence, right? How could I possibly point at a part of biology that's incongruent with my gender? It would be impossible because all facets of biology are included in all possible gender identities.
Even if you want to go as far as like social traits and things like that, you'll, at least I find, if you ask people what it means to be a good man or a good woman, they will identify characteristics that would be good in either a man or a woman.
Exactly, exactly, and
Like
we
nurturing. Is it
certainly
bad that a man be nurturing? No, it's good if a
exactly.
man is nurturing.
We also certainly wouldn't want to say that anyone who's nurturing isn't a man. Like, let's say 99% of men were just totally not nurturing. And then there was this one guy man, right? Or male who was very nurturing. We wouldn't want to all of a sudden culturally be like, oh, that's a female. That'd be so stupid.
Just let people identify as what they want to identify. Who cares? It has almost,
Yes.
even if
Well,
I
see,
knew any in person, which I don't, like it has literally like no effect on me.
see, what I'm trying to say though is that if their identity is a claim to incongruence, then it is invalid. If your identity is such and such, good for you. But if you claim that your identity is not you, now you're contradicting yourself. If you say I identify with not my biology. Well, what? You are your biology. Like, what do you mean? You cannot escape reality. You cannot say I am not my biology. I don't identify with any of my arms or my legs or my toes or my feet or my head. Nothing.
Maybe the words they're using, the language that they're using to describe their experience, just doesn't make sense to us because we're not in that position. It's not
Well,
capturing
again,
the concept
well,
correctly, or not
but
correctly, but
again, bro,
sufficiently for us.
I'm in that position, right? There are aspects of me that are not socially normative, right? Like, I wouldn't say I'm following the norms, or I guess I'm using normativity wrong there, but I'm not following the norms in society with a lot of my like traits. But that doesn't mean I'm incongruent with me. That means I'm incongruent with society. How would it be possible that I could be incongruent with me, right? Even if I'm like thin and frail and I want to get stronger, well, that's not really an incongruence with me. I want to be different. Yes, I want to improve. I want to get stronger and more fit. But that's still within the possibilities of my biology. If I said I wanted to grow a green arm, right? Well, That's impossible. So your incongruence, it's like
But what
that's
if the
actually
technology is
incongruent.
what if the technology is such that we can help you grow a green arm?
Yeah, like body mods are cool, right? As a consenting adult, if you want to get piercings, tattoos, and body mod, that's fine. But again, that's not a form of incongruence. You're making an adult decision to modify your body, right? So the incongruence would be something like
Do you think
go
that
ahead.
this is happening to children?
Yeah, which is really bad.
Not in the United States. It's not. They don't
What do
allow
you mean?
surgeries before then.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think every state's somewhat different, but I'm not too up on American medical policy. I know that it's very
I
rampant
think
in Canada.
the policy currently is gender affirming care and puberty blockers,
Right, which is
which are both
again,
reversible.
well, reversible is a claim, but I would say puberty blockers seem to be again this claim of biological intervention, right, for an identity of social norms, which makes no sense. There can't be a contradiction between your when you hit puberty, right, and like how how you identify in society. Like, how could that be an incongruence? How could you not identify with when you hit puberty? Like that, it's like that seems like a contradiction in terms. And why would we how would we possibly justify like blocking puberty due to someone's social identity?
I think there's research that shows that there are brain differences between these people too, who are identify as trans.
Well, if that's the case, then we've now made sex and gender equivalent again, right? Like, if gender isn't a social construct and it's in fact biological, and we can find brain patterns that show a gender identity, right? Well, then we're now defining the term gender not as strictly a social construct. So it's semantics now. Like, we have to be careful with how we use the terms, right? The term gender, if we're strictly using it as a social construct, we would find no biological indicator related to a social construct. There would be no indicator, right? No matter how far we dig into the brain or right look into the biology, there's not going to be a direct indicator to their social identity. That's a construct.
How do you feel about gender affirming care within cis people?
Well, yeah, I just commented on it with myself. Like, gender affirming care is a really good, positive thing, right? It's just when you're affirming a contradiction, that's impossible. So for me, getting up and smoking a cigarette and have a coffee could even be a form of gender affirming care, right? If I feel masculine having my cigarette at work or whatever, it could be a form of gender affirming care, right? But that doesn't mean that the moment I'm trying to
we can go even so far as to say like hair plugs. That's gender affirming care.
Yep, 100%.
Or
yes.
Breast augmentation.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the problem is when I'm saying something like, right, I don't identify as a smoker, and then I'm smoking a cigarette. That's the contradiction.
If you were taking steps to become not a smoker, would that make you a trans smoker or trans non-smoker?
You're transitioning into a non-smoker. You're making that transition, sure. But I mean,
maybe that captures the concept that they're trying to express.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, I still would have a hard time understanding what they mean by like an incongruence. I can kind of steel man it. I get what you're saying, like, but it still doesn't seem like an actual incongruence. It sounds like they're just trying to make changes to their life or their body. Like an actual incongruence, it's a deeper claim than simply body modification, right? It's a claim that they are trapped in the wrong body. That they're a male, or well, it's not quite a male, that they're a man inside of a female body, right? Or vice versa. So that seems to be the contradiction.
Let's say we have somebody with like some sort of degenerative disease that makes it so they can't walk. Do we change the mind to accept that, or do we change the body so that they can walk?
Yeah, we would hope that we could help the body walk, right?
And that seems to be a pretty solid argument in favor of letting them body modify, right?
But yeah, body, like I said earlier, an adult that consents to body modification, I'm all about it. I'm a live and let live kind of person. I don't care what
So
you do.
even if that person was a child,
Well, no,
they
because
may
now
not
we're
they may not be able to make that decision on their own, but
yes.
with their parents and a doctor's approval, they can make that decision, don't you think?
But well, no, because the stages of deciding to modify your body is very different than like affirming medical care. There, you would have to show like a necessary reason
And
to go
so
through with this procedure.
if we could do a surgery that would make it so they could walk again, why would we not do that?
Oh, in that case, we would, right? In that
A
case, we
significant
would.
difference between those.
Well, because walking again is a biological indicator. It's not a social construct identity. Walking again is an actual biological indicator. This person can walk or cannot walk. It's not an identity claim.
And appearing as the sex that you feel like you are inside would be the same thing.
Yes, but there can't. But again, so we got to be careful there. Like, it's not about your sex, right? It doesn't matter what your sex is, but that's the whole claim. That's why I'm having problems
it is
with
to
this.
them about to them it's about
That's cool. Again, now we're back to body mod. That's fine if they're choosing to do that, but you cannot say it's necessary, right? Then you'd be a trans medicalist. You can't say in order to be a man, you have to go through these necessary biological things, right? Whereas with walking, there is that. If you cannot walk, you are not walking. But with
maybe
being a man,
maybe it's both biological and sociological.
it is, which is what my diagram shows, right? But what I'm saying is there can't be a contradiction between the social and biological, and that's their claim. There's no room for a contradiction. Otherwise, if there was, right, if there's actually an incongruence, that would mean here's another way of putting it. Once there's an incongruence found, why can't we generalize that incongruence across everyone? Right? Why is it only for this person they have an incongruence with their left foot, right? But no one else seems to have that.
I think the current argument was that by modifying their brain to fit their body, whether it be through therapy and stuff, leads to a host of other problems like depression, sewer slide, and other things. And this one thing can fix all of that.
So yeah, you're saying rather than take the psychological approach, take the physical approach, like biological intervention. Like they're trying to like condition them to think that there's something other than they are seems a lot easier to just go through with the surgery and affirm who they think they are. That's what you were saying, right?
Well, not only is it easier, but it has better results.
And it has better results. Yeah. And it has better results. That's your claim. Yeah, so like the problem here is that there's no way to show what the indicator you're even talking about is. When you say there's better results with what? Right? Double mastectomies on 12-year-olds?
Satisfaction in their life, less slew or slide.
But what specific procedure are we talking about? See, like you brought up puberty blockers. There's so many.
I wouldn't be able to say that because I'm not really educated in that.
Obviously, each procedure is going to have its own results, right? You can't generalize about the results.
Arguments that I've heard for that.
Right, but the results, you're generalizing so much about the results, but you got to go into a specific procedure if you're going to do that, because we can't generalize about the results of gender affirmation care. There's so many different procedures.
I think maybe they're talking about the holistic approach, like all of the.
Right, and that's what I'm kind of skeptical of. Right, you can't generalize overall about all gender affirming care and then tell me about results. I'm not going to be convinced by it. You got to show me data on a specific procedure, because otherwise it's way too broad of a claim, right? It's
No
not
fair.
even
You can't ask for data. I just want to parrot stuff. Come on.
But I've heard these. This is a good point. I mean, hey, there might be room for, if it can be shown that certain procedures have certain results, I'm sympathetic to that. I'm open minded. I'm just hesitant to come across one because, like, for instance, a double mastectomy, right, on a 12-year-old, I don't see how that could ever affirm someone's gender at 12, right? If that's called gender affirming procedure or care, well, for me, that sounds like a complete contradiction. Does not. I have no idea how a 12-year-old girl's identity, right, would ever relate to getting a double mastectomy. There's no way that that's, in my mind, possible, right? How?
Is it?
How?
Is it?
What claim could she possibly make? Like, how many?
I don't think that would even happen on a 12-year-old, because they would most likely be on puberty blockers and not have developed.
In Vancouver, the BC Children's Hospital is performing these procedures all the time, bro. Hundreds of children. That's why I bring this up. And what's it based on? What could the possible justification for that be? What could she, what norms could my 12-year-old daughter, possibly not be fitting into for her to require a double mastectomy? No matter what she does, what clothes she wears, what friends she has, what games she plays, what her interests are, I cannot think of a single thing that would confirm, oh yeah, we gotta do a double mastectomy for show. She's a healthy 12-year-old, but other than she has psychological problems, but yeah, we gotta affirm those psychological problems by cutting off her chest. It makes no sense. Unless someone can convince me of it. I'm open-minded, but so far I've not been convinced of that at all.
Were you being hyperbolic when you said hundreds?
No, it's maybe the research that you're coming across is different, but no.
Gorgonzola wants you to present evidence of the claim. I'm not going to hold you to that standard because I'm not going to look it up.
BC, look up BC Children's Hospital. Look it up. Look up gender affirming care, BC Children's Hospital. How many kids they take into that clinic yearly? It's thousands of kids. And then when it comes to like the specific procedure I'm talking about, over the last decade, there's been hundreds of kids.
Importantly, what do I want to eat for lunch today?
Dude, I've been fasting lately, and I fucking love it, but at the same time,
if you say nothing, I'm unfollowing you.
Yeah, no. Now I was just gonna say, now whenever my friends talk about food and stuff, I'm so no one likes me anymore around lunchtime and shit. I've lost a lot of, for real. Like everyone's like going to lunch or going to do shit, and they're like, oh, Drew doesn't eat, so they don't even like invite me and shit anymore. It's bad. But hey, that's the first time I think I accidentally dropped my name on TikTok. Not that it matters.
Right.
Drew. Everyone just calls me Logic. Yeah, Drew, but everyone just calls me Logic.
That's true. Well, nice to meet you, Drew. My name is actually Sage.
Is it?
Name, but that's what I go by.
Oh, that's cool. That's a cool name. Yo, anyone else up on the panel, feel free to jump in here. I can also change the background. We can talk about whatever. I'm not married to this argument or whatever.
Yeah, so you were claiming that you couldn't see any reason to do, say, a mastectomy on somebody to improve their, like, what do you call it, psychological condition, right?
Specifically, psychological conditions specifically related to their gender identity. Yeah.
Right, but, like, even though gender is a social categorization, it's based on like people's perception of your placement in that social categorization is dependent on a lot of features, including some biological features. So when people mistake you for the other categorization based on some perceived biological feature, that produces the social incongruence, right?
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what it's really about, is like other people are going to place you in the wrong category upon seeing you unless you change certain things.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I hear you, but I don't think that is what this is about, because there are the same type of claim on the other end, which is that I don't like, no one in the trans community really is in support of trans medicalism, which is what you're claiming, which is that I
No, I'm
require
not.
some. Well,
No, I'm
what?
saying
But,
if
okay.
it's up to the individual if they are bothered by how they're being perceived and treated, right? So if they are managing to cope in some way or get perceived appropriately in some way without the surgery, then that's fine for them. But it depends on the individual what, you know.
I think I might have thought of a hypothetical. What if this child has a rare form of breast cancer?
Then the double mastectomy has to take place.
Do you think that's going to improve their mental condition too?
But that's not the indicator. The indicator
But
is a
I like
biological one. So truly,
what if it
it
prevents
does
them
not matter. It
from
does not matter,
ending
right?
their own?
Doesn't matter. Their psychological state with severe advanced cancer is not taken into consideration. The double mastectomy is performed, and then they are put through therapy after. If it's life-saving treatment, you do the treatment, regardless of their mental state, and that's the whole point. We could not.
And so
There would not be an identity.
what if this child
Go the other way. Go the other way. What if? Because this is the more wait. This is the more realistic
what if this
version of what
child
you're
is going to
saying.
commit?
Wait.
What if this child is going to commit sewer slide
Mhm.
because they're not getting it? They're not getting this. Isn't that still life-saving care?
You need to think about it the other way, man. Most 12-year-old girls who have breast cancer, who have to have a double mastectomy, are losing their gender identity and are going to be suicidal afterwards, because they just lost a very important biological indicator towards their gender identity for most girls. Right? And they still do the double mastectomy.
It seems like a good analogy.
Because they go through with the procedure regardless of their psychological state, and all they're using is biological indicators.
No, because in both cases, it seems to prevent unalivement.
You would have to show me an example of a 12-year-old girl who has breast cancer, who the doctors say, actually, I think she's too much of a woman for us to cut off her breasts, so we're going to leave them on. Because she's saying she identifies as a woman with breasts, so we're not going to do the procedure. That's what you'd have to show me. But they don't do that.
Then
All they consider are the biological indicators.
What if they follow up the mastectomy with breast augmentation to prevent her sewer slide?
You're not seeing what I'm saying, right? You're not seeing what I'm saying. The double mastectomy, they go through with it in terms of cancer, regardless of the psychological impact on the child. If most children do not want the breast cut off, dude, right? So it's a highly invasive, grotesque, horrible procedure to go through, even with cancer, especially with cancer, because it's going against your gender identity. So they're doing a procedure in terms of cancer to save the life of the child, even though it does not affirm their gender. See? You see what I'm saying?
So I looked at the BC Children's Hospital because I was curious about the surgery thing, and I don't see anything that talks about gender affirming surgery on there.
You gotta look deeper. I don't know. I can send you some references.
You see gender affirming hormones and puberty blockers, but on their surgery page, there isn't anything around gender surgery there.
Okay, maybe it's not like on their website, but I'll find the references for you. You guys feel free to keep talking here. I'll see if I can quickly find these.
Trans is just a word when we speak about identity. So trivial. It doesn't convey anything in this context specifically.
Yeah, pretty much. You're right. Doesn't really convey anything specific. You're absolutely right.
Sense.
Well, it doesn't have any specific. We could go back to sort of what we were talking about, Lord Fifth, the last time about set theory, and maybe we define gender as like a relationship between our social psychological construct and our sex, but that relationship isn't really indicative of anything specific, right? To Val's point.
Indicative of anything specific, like your psychological state.
Right. You could have really any psychological state and any biology it's not specific to any individual psychology or biology. It's all encompassing. The term is all encompassing.
Confused there. Like all encompassing in what sense?
Well, can we find a certain biological outcome that would disclude? Can we find a specific biological outcome that would exclude someone from a specific gender ideal or gender identity? For instance, does something make someone not, is there a biological indicator that would ensure us that someone's not a man?
So, because gender is not defined just by the biology, but biology and social and the psychology.
Okay,
You
so well
could
then the
find.
relationship. Then can you give me an example of a necessary relationship between, right, someone's psychology and their biology that dictates what gender they are?
So, if someone is a particular gender, sorry, if someone's a particular sex, right, and let's say the gender expression that they're trying to express does not align with the norm that's usually associated with the sex that they are born with, then that is a trans identity. And I can repeat it if you want.
It says, oh, sorry, now I'm sorry, bro. I'm caught up reading these references now. I sort of missed what you said there. My apologies. It says here, though, that about 48,000 patients underwent surgeries during the 5 years studied. 13,000 procedures were done in 2019, and 12,800 were done in 2020. A little more than half of the patients were aged 19 to 30. And it does say that surgeries in patients 18 and younger were rare, fewer than 1,200 in the highest volume year. So that's under BC Children's Hospital, it's the gender tab. I've gone our services, clinics, gender tab, and then I'm going through here and reading the statistics.
Post the link if possible.
Yeah, I just have, let's see. Okay, so I guess should I just put it in the comments here, the chat? Yeah, I have a fucking, okay. It's gonna take me a sec.
Usually show up in the chat if you're trying to post a link.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not, and I'm on my computer here. So do you want me to just say it here, or here? It's bcchildrens.ca, bcchildrens. Fuck, autocorrect is so annoying. .ca /clinics - services slash endocrinology. How do you say that word? Endocrinology. Endocrinology. And that's it. That's the link. I'm putting it in the chat here. Obviously, feel free to correct me or find anything that I get wrong or whatever. I don't know.
The gender clinic roadmap PDF.
Oh my god, I left it. Fuck. Yeah, I think so. No, it wasn't a PDF. It wasn't a PDF.
Did the FAQ?
Let's see here. Fuck. I've lost it now. When I searched it on Google, the thing I read was connected to this link. And then when I'm on the link now, I cannot find that same thing that I read. So that's frustrating. I don't know where it is on this website. Test results? Test results. Well, no, man, this is important, actually. This is really, really important that I actually do have these resources figured out. So I appreciate you pushing me on this. I really do. I'm in test results now. And it has a link to Health Information Management Release of the Information Office. That's what it's called. Whatever the hell, why it would be called that. And now it says it has all the oh no. Well, where would we find these numbers? Where would the best place, rather than using my own bias, where, if we wanted to try to look up these kinds of numbers, where would we go for this? Because this is a good point. I've obviously heard these stats through talking points and people I've talked to and lightly brushed through the data, but like, where would we go to look for these numbers? Because, yeah, I'm not being convinced by my own references here, so I want to know the numbers. Like, I'm willing to be corrected on whatever the numbers are. Yeah, we could ask ChatGPT. Okay, let's just see where that goes. We'll take it with a manimal. That's a good suggestion. We'll take it with a grain of salt. Let's just see Let's just see what ChatGPT says. I'm gonna say, and my phone.
I think we can check the NIH.
Okay. Would it have specific numbers for the BC Children's Hospital?
Not necessarily for BC, but more in general.
Right. Yeah. I just asked how would we find the numbers of surgeries done at a BC Children's Hospital. And it gave me some resources here. Okay, so yeah, bcchildrens.ca, I was close. bcchildrens.ca, under publications or reports and under news and media, and then they have this governing body, PHSA, the Provincial Health Services Authority, which all those should have numbers. But, oh yeah, our research. says, okay, it gives the sources here. It says BC Children's Hospital performs 6,000 surgeries annually. This is just general surgeries, not talking about gender anymore. Additionally, the hospital sees approximately 7,000 surgical visits a year. And then I said, how many of these are on patients under 18?
All of them.
And yeah, they're all, exactly, because it's a children's hospital, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what question should I ask this specifically about? How should I word the question about gender here? Gender affirming care. How
I mean,
many
the thing is, we could ask ChatGPT, but if it doesn't bring up a link that we could
It
use to
does.
answer.
It's bringing up the sources. It seems to be bringing up the sources. So I was gonna use that and see where it takes us. I don't know.
Okay, then you can just.
I'll be honest with you. What it says, like,
Mhm. Oh yeah,
I,
I trust you.
yeah, I don't care one way or the other.
You can check for
Yeah, what should I say? How many surgeries are like? Yeah, what should I say?
gender affirming surgeries.
Right. Okay. It's thinking. Taking a long time to think. As of okay, they gave me 2 responses. Let's see here. Can't fucking click them.
So going to say that the raw numbers might not be super helpful. What might be more helpful is out of how many consultations are they suggesting and actually performing this type of care.
I'm also curious as to the requirements to like the criteria to meet to actually have this type of procedure done for someone that's under age.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be curious about that too. Okay, so it gave me 2 responses here, and it has all the sources linked. The first response has 3 sources. I don't know if you guys just want me to read it. Let's see. Someone else wants to come up. As of 2023, British Columbia performed 115 lower gender affirming surgeries, such as vaginoplasty or phalloplasty. This figure does not include upper surgeries like chest masculinization or breast augmentation, which are conducted at various healthcare facilities across the province. Between 2018 and 2024, over 2,800 upper gender affirming chest surgeries were performed in BC, with annual numbers rising from 200 in 2018 to 582 in 2022. Specific data on the number of these surgeries performed at BC Children's Hospital is not publicly available. However, the Gender Surgery Program BC, located at Vancouver General Hospital, stipulates that patients must be 19 years old to access lower gender affirming surgeries. Upper surgeries may have different age requirements, but detailed age specific statistics are not readily accessible. I'll skim through the second response and see if there's any major differences.
Okay.
A lot of this, it talks about how it's not publicly available data.
Okay. And it seems like what's in the first one is also talking about it being over 19 or 19.
Which is weird because we've already said that none of the surgeries at the hospital are over 19, but this also goes over how there's other facilities. So maybe they'll be intake at the BC Children's Hospital and then sent to another facility for the surgery. But yeah, it did seem to say that the lower surgeries to 10, or I think are, I guess, all of 19 and above. But that would, like we said, we don't really have access to all the data. So I'm skeptical of that claim too, especially considering that, what was the exact number here of top surgeries? 2,800, man. 2,800.
And I would imagine that top surgeries would have a more strict requirement.
2,800 out of how many though?
Right, your
Like
question about the intake
the raw
stage.
number.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
the
good.
raw
That's a good
number isn't.
question. You're right. I don't know. I don't know how to get that number either. That's a good point, though. Right? That is a good point. Still, Canada is small, right? And we only have, like, I think how many people are in Vancouver? 3 million. Like, it's a small
You guys like the
city.
second largest country by land mass?
Yeah, in size. Yeah, but we only have like 32 million people, man, in our whole country. Population of Canada is, 41.5 million, 10 million off there. And what's the population of Vancouver? Sorry about the background noise too. Dude, population of Vancouver in 2022
Used to it.
is,
You're always on the street.
I know, I am. The population of Vancouver is only 700,000 in 2022. That's downtown, I guess. Not even 1 million people. So, I mean, those numbers are pretty wild, in my opinion. Because,
I mean,
again,
to you, would one be wild?
what?
What if there was only one case? Would that be wild to you?
Well, in cases of
Like any amount of
yeah.
cases?
I mean, no, I'm open-minded to, what would you call it? Progressive medical treatment. I'm open to the idea that science is what it is. It's somewhat experimental, and like we don't have all the answers. I'm open to that.
So then I think it's going to be really relevant. Like how often, like the amount of surgery out of how many is going to be
Yeah, man.
super relevant. Then
It's just when we
because
connect.
1,200 sounds a lot when you're talking about like dollars to some of us.
When we're talking about connecting a social ideology with biological intervention on kids, right? It seems like a pretty black and white situation.
Yeah, but before we run with that, right? We do not know for sure, right? Because all it gave us was that it was over 19.
No, it definitely insinuates that the double mastectomies are performed on kids under 18.
Oh, where?
That thing, well, at least in that thing that I read, right?
From what I saw there, it just said that there's a different requirement for that.
My question, though, is specifically about underage gender affirming surgeries, right? And it only clarified that the lower gender affirming surgeries are for 19 and above. And then it just goes on to say,
Yeah, but it's not just sorry, Sage, it's not just lower, right? The type that you're doing is vaginoplasty, right?
For what? What are you saying? The type that the number 100 as of 2023, British Columbia performed 115 lower gender affirming surgeries, such as what you said, vaginoplasty or phalloplasty. And it says this figure does not include upper surgeries like chest masculinization or breast augmentation. And then it goes on to say between 2018 and 2024, 2,800 upper gender affirming chest surgeries were performed in BC. Okay, so let's ask further. How many of the upper gender affirming surgeries were on patients under 18?
Yeah.
So can we go back to my hypothetical a little bit here?
Yeah.
If there's a female, whatever, I don't know what to say, a girl who gets a double mastectomy due to cancer to save her life, would you say that they should not be allowed to get breast augmentation also to save their life from their own hand?
Yeah, like no, that's not the same justification. If they're claiming that we need to do the surgery because they're gonna commit shmuicide, that's a different claim. No, that's not a justifiable reason to do a surgery. No. We need in order to do a surgery, we need a specific biological indicator, something that we can check back, right, to see if there's improvement or some. That's the thing. We after the surgery is done, we would have no way of marking whether or not it's actually improved. Is this placebo? Is the person just changing in their life? How do we know if our surgery is actually improved if the only indicator that we're basing it on is a social construct? You see?
It's not
So
just
then you
social.
would
It's
ban
not
all
just.
breast augmentation?
In terms of just gender affirmation, yeah.
Well,
On
even when
children, yeah,
cis women get it,
it's
He's fine
different.
with it if you're an adult.
Yeah, if you're an adult doing
We're
body,
fucking.
I'm still not fine with it being pitched as like medical affirmation in any way, right? If you need a body modification or like you have trauma surgery, like those are totally different. Like reconstructive surgery, those are completely different reasons for the surgery. It's not because their gender ideology doesn't align with who they are, right? It's because their body doesn't align with what they want. That's a totally different claim. If you're claiming that you have certain traits in your biology that you want to change, that's a rational claim. Okay, change your body, right? But if you're claiming that you have a social identity that does not in any way congruent with your biology, well, now you're being irrational. There's no how could you show me that your identity in any way isn't congruent with who you are already? You are you. So
But
where are you getting this identity from? Right?
the
If you cut off
claim.
your left toe, it doesn't impact your identity.
Hold on. The claim is not that it's incongruent with their biology, right? The claim is more around the gender not aligning with the norm
But
of
but
what's expected.
if that's the case, then there's no justification for biological intervention. If it's simply a social construct, then
I never said it's
why?
simply a social construct, though. I said
Okay.
that I said that the claim is that however they feel, right, or whatever expression whatever gender expression that they want to partake in does not align with the norm of what's usually expected with someone of their sex. And that sex part is the biology part, right? So it's related to the biology too. It's not just biology or it's not just social construct, right? It's something that relates to both the biology and social
Yes,
construct.
it's yes, but the relationship, as far as it being incongruent, right? It has to be the incongruence is stipulating between biology and social construct. Those are the two things that are incongruent. That's the claim, right? For instance, you
Not,
can't
not,
have if you earlier we went over we could have an incongruence within biology or we could have an incongruence within gender, but once you start saying there's an incongruence
yeah,
between my gender
but
and
I
my biology, that doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
but I feel like you're missing the psychological part of it, right? So, would you agree that how one feels about themselves is not just related to their social, but also their biology? Like, would you
Not
say?
necessarily. Not
So
necessarily.
you won't say that something like how someone feels about themselves is related to their brain state?
Yes, it's related to the brain state. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said that how one feels about themselves is also related to their biology,
Okay. Okay,
right?
so you're connecting psychology to biology now. Okay.
Yes. So if someone feels about themselves uh, as a particular as a particular gender, and that gender expression does not necessarily align with the norm of whatever their sex is or whatever sex they're born with is, then I think it's a valid claim.
Of incongruence.
of incongruence. Yes.
Okay, so it's valid to say that you're not congruent with social norms. Yeah, that's valid. You could say that. But you're saying
But that's
when you said norms related to sex, there aren't any. So now you're just using your cultural bias, right?
oh, no. I didn't say norms related to sex.
Yeah, you did.
I said the gender expression. It's the gender expression I'm talking about. So
You
as
did
someone,
you did say that it's a relationship between what is you said they haven't the incongruence is to what is normal or the norm of their sex characteristics.
yeah, what's the norm of the gender expressions of the sex?
Right, but there aren't any. There's
So
no such thing.
so as a man, right? You do identify as a man, just to, just to confirm. You identify as a man.
No, not necessarily. No, no, I
Okay.
don't.
What do you identify as?
I mean, we could do a man for this conversation, but I
Okay.
don't really have like a gender identity like that, I guess. I don't
Okay.
really know what that even means.
Okay.
I already won that conversation.
For someone who identifies as a man, right? I think there are certain things that's expected of someone who identifies as a man within a social within a
Name
society.
one. Name one.
So,
Like what?
for example, it's expected for a man to open the door when you're talking of chivalry for a woman,
Okay.
right? So
I don't know
that's
where you're going with this, but I'm letting you hang
um,
yourself.
A really
You go
old.
for it. You
yeah,
go
yeah,
for
Seems
it.
like a
Keep
really
making
old
your point.
expectation.
yeah. It's an old expectation, but I'm trying to make a point about how you can have an expectation that's related to how you relate to people, that's tied to your gender, and that's ultimately tied to your sex too. Are you there?
He's on
Oh,
mute.
Yeah, I'm here. I heard all that, but I don't. I'm trying to wrap my head around what you mean by it. To be honest with you, I don't understand. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's most clear to think about it as a social categorization that's determined by each individual appraiser, right? So like a person's self-identification in the categories can misalign with how other people would categorize them. And the way the categories are determined include biological factors, but not only biological factors. So somebody might feel like they already fit well enough and don't need to change the biological factors, and some people may not feel that way. And it depends on how people are perceiving them or how they perceive themselves. So like if one's own if one's own like perception of the classifiers for the social category of gender are heavily based on the sexual traits, then they would feel more desire to change those sexual traits or biological traits. Um, is that making sense?
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. Yeah, I think I would agree with all that.
Yeah, so I think the incongruence idea is just that like there's a fuzzy category boundary on the social categories of gender, and the incongruence is like some degree of not fitting with that fuzzy boundary, right?
Yeah, it's just because the boundary is fuzzy, we can't really use it as a justification, right? That's the problem. For if you want to mod your body, go ahead, but once you're using a fuzzy boundary to justify that body modification as like not no longer just a choice or a preference, but actually standard medicalized care for children, that's a whole different claim.
would you say that if the boundary wasn't fuzzy, then it would be a valid reason?
Yes.
Okay, so what about the boundary being fuzzy or not fuzzy makes it a valid reason?
Well, because again, like in the case of someone who can't walk, if we do a surgery to try to improve their walking, right? The boundary of like ethics and stuff is always going to be fuzzy, but we actually have a biological indicator that isn't fuzzy, right? Whether or not the person can walk, and that would be to the results of the surgery. So if I kept doing this surgery on people who couldn't walk, and we didn't have one single person who ended up being able to walk in the end, it would be a clear sign, right, that my surgery is not efficient. If I just kept saying, well, it's not only related to how they walk, right? When they get the surgery, they also are less likely to commit suicide. See? Well, it's like, but that's not the indicator, right? The indicator is a biological one. Can they walk or not? So if this,
So
go ahead.
you don't consider a person's psychological state an indicator?
Well, typically with surgery, no, right? Surgery
No,
isn't.
I'm just talking of a person's psychological state. Would you say that is an indicator or not
Indicator of what?
for performing surgery on
No,
someone?
no.
Okay,
But that
can you
goes
tell me
against the
why?
body modification thing, right?
No,
Like
because
that's I don't see
surgery
where you're
isn't
trying to.
body modification. Surgery is not body modification, right? Surgery goes. Most people who go into surgery are
Surgery
psychologically
is,
hurt.
sorry,
It's traumatizing to go into
body
surgery.
modification is a type of surgery.
Not medically affirming, like for your health. You don't need to be a doctor to do body piercings and tattoos are not performed by people with PhDs.
Yeah, but in the same vein, you don't necessarily need to be uh, certified whatever to do a vasectomy. You could do it from sorry, did I say vasectomy? I didn't mean vasectomy. One of those gender affirming surgeries. Like if my point is if what you're saying is that depending on the person who is doing the surgery, then it matters in some way. I don't really see that as a valid
Well,
reason because I think it could go both ways.
yeah, like the fact that people go through surgery all the time, regardless of their psychological well-being, is a testament to my argument, right? No one wants to go through surgery for the most part.
Yeah, but I'm saying that people do also go through surgery based on their psychological
That's not usually
indicator.
that
Yeah,
as far as medically affirming care, that's never the indicator. It's like we don't do brain surgery unless it's like literally like lobotomies and stuff. Like most surgeries are not, if you break your arm, the surgery is taking place regardless of your psychological state. You could opt out of the surgery, that's true, but like the care of whether your arm's going to heal or not is not related to your psychological state. You could be suicidal, right? Doesn't matter. Your arm's broken. Doesn't matter what your mental state is about. Like, I don't know why you'd even consider that. The cast goes on the arm. This person could be bipolar, autistic, Down syndrome, a vegetable with no, right? If they have a broken arm, you cast it. What difference does it make?
I feel like it's weird because I would consider any neurosurgeon someone who does that.
Yeah, what we wouldn't do is surgery on phantom limb victims, right? Someone who thinks that they should
In,
cut off their arm. We don't do that as
But
medically affirming
that's
care.
not what a phantom limb is.
Right, or
That's not what a
well,
phantom limb
yeah,
is.
phantom limb thinks you think you have a limb that you don't, right? That's the
Yeah.
phantom limb. Yeah, so I meant, I
And
guess, what would be the term that I was
and
looking for?
Hey, I can't.
and we do. Oh, go ahead,
Oh, you
Fine.
guys. Yeah, yeah. I just want to say I can't stay on long. I just wanted to. Y'all were talking numbers, and I can't speak to Canada, but I looked up. Like a PubMed, National Library of Health Sciences article for the states, and there you can go through all the. I'm not going to go through all of the methodology, but the general methodology was through accessing what was it? American College of Surgeons National Surgical Quality Improvement Program, their pediatric database from 2018 to 2021, and there was 108 total like assignment surgeries over the 4-year period, so 108, and the mean age was 17, so it was just below minor. It was 16. Well, it was 16.9 was the mean age. So it's very, 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 very low in the United States. But I can't speak to Canada, so I haven't looked at the numbers.
Very interesting and honest numbers. They are low and they're underage. Conflicting. It's conflicting information. Very interesting, Pi, right? Like, I can see they're very...
What's conflicting?
Well, I just mean not conflicting in the sense of what you provided. I thank you for what you shared there. I concede, and I humbly concede that number is lower than I would have expected. Yet, the precursor of it being the mean under 17 is still an interesting data point to my argument, I think. But nonetheless, for the most part,
he feels conflicted by those numbers.
Yeah, I feel conflicted by those numbers. Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, the mean was 16.9, so almost 17. Yeah, it was essentially 17. was I mean, so the highest age you could be and not be like being not a minor.
I think we have to take into consideration here
so it's
that
not
there's
like they
a
were
lot
doing
of
it on 12-year-olds, right?
But see, we have to consider here that in another country, and I know you said you did the precursor of Canada, but I think actually in terms of medical care, Canada is an entirely different country when it comes to these statistics and America. For real. I think we do have a way more progressive approach, right? And a liberal ideology that goes hand in hand with our medical care, not only with gender ideology, but medical care in general, right? The socialized medical care system, our whole policy approach in Canada to these things are very, very different. And I'm, again, saturated with when people say, like, I've never really met a trans person, I don't have a trans friend. Like, these numbers for me are not coincidentally rare. Pretty much everyone I know in one way or another don't hesitate to have some sort of gender fluidity. And I know upwards of 10 to 20 people who've gone through these surgeries as like close friends, you know? So I'm heavily involved in this, I think, and that's a testament to perhaps the country I'm in. So that is something
you also hang out with weirdos
said. And I'm a weirdo myself. Yeah, 100%. That's true. I hang out on the fringes. That's true. I'll give you that. I find these people. Yeah.
No, I mean, I mean, I live in probably one of the most like the areas that would probably be the most accepting areas in the United States, you know, for this. So I know a lot of people as well.
Dude, that's I think why we can have
You're a weirdo too, Pi. I get it.
I'm a weirdo, man.
That's why we can have an honest conversation about it, though. I think, you know, like,
and the numbers. Okay, like I would have to look more into the study definitely seems accurate, but the actual methodology, I don't know enough. I'd have to look into this. What was it? National Surgical Quality Improvement Program, American College of Surgeons pediatric database. I would have to for me to be honest myself, I'd have to look into how exhaustive that particular pediatric database is, right? So it's likely probably slightly higher. I don't know, but I don't know how exhaustive that particular database is. So
yeah, there's a lot of research that could be done.
But if you took it over, like, if you broke those numbers up over each year, it would be like, it came out to like 26 a year.
Yeah, like one.
With the mean age being 17.
Not even one in each state.
Yeah. Yeah, because
half the states.
Because it is illegal. Like, that's why the mean age is 17. And like, so that tells me that wait. In some of those cases, just let me finish my thought here. And probably most of those cases with the mean age being 17, they were probably emancipated. There was a good deal of them probably emancipated, so legally an adult anyway.
Right,
is my guess that would I would imagine there are multiple. I don't know if all those cases would have been emancipation, but I imagine there would have been quite a few emancipations among that number.
Yeah, like that age being the mean probably isn't a
Right. Yeah.
coincidence.
That would tell me that like there was probably some emancipation going on there.
Yeah, I'm sorry about cutting you off. I think we have a little bit of a delay, but I was going to say too, it would be interesting to see if the numbers came from particular grouping of states. I'm assuming it would, right? Like more progressive states would be producing these numbers. I don't think it'd probably be like an even
California,
distribution across
Washington, and
this.
New York.
Right. It wouldn't be like an even distribution across the country. So that's another
You mean
interesting
of
part.
where they were happening, not the total. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, because the total database was a country database, but you mean where they were. Okay, I got you.
Right.
And then,
Like
then probably the
if-
rest of them in Portland.
if all of those numbers came from like 2 or 3 states, obviously there's a correlation there, right? Between the policy, I would say, between the policies governing the care there and the other states.
Yeah. My only point is to clear up that at least again, I can't speak to Canada, but in respect to the United States, I feel like the claim that it's happening pervasively is just a complete dog whistle. It's bullshit. The numbers do not show that.
Yeah, in terms of in America, gender affirming surgeries taking place on underage people or people at all, yeah, those it would be alarmist.
It's
to say that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
but
my only point is to just, to claim that it's happening like to any degree of like high magnitude. It's just not true.
The only pushback I would say on that is that like the surgeries are only one component, and that's the most extreme end of the spectrum, right? The ideology in general of being contradicting this ability to like question your biology, I think is pretty widespread. Whether people actually go through things like hormones or puberty blockers are a lot more popular than the actual surgeries, right? And then beyond that,
I was gonna say
just fluidity.
It might be relevant to look up gender affirming care that ends in surgery versus gender affirming care that only is employing like puberty blockers or something like that. If you find those statistics.
Yeah, they gave a number of there's a lot in this study. I think they gave a number that was out of that total number, and I think the total number was general gender affirming care, not surgeon. I think it was out of
Right.
Is that what that 0.00003% was? Or
no, that was a population number that I gave from total like adolescents. That was like a population number from that. Yeah. But I think out of the like total like care, it was like 500,000. So then 108 out of like 500,000 general gender affirming care.
Yeah, some of the
a very small percentage.
Some of the stuff they do for that could be related to gender care doesn't have to do with trans ideology at all, too, because there's women that have too much estrogen, that don't have enough estrogen. Some women have too much testosterone.
Yeah, the VAT, in fact, the VAT probably like the vast majority of it is probably just has to do with like precocious. Yeah.
Okay, but see, those are biological indicators.
I feel like we need somebody who identifies as trans here to make this conversation.
Those are biological indicators.
I'm not talking about identity at all. I'm just talking about
exactly.
I'm not speaking out of terms. Like
See, most doctors, I don't think, would record a data point that isn't biological. That's the whole tension that I'm having here, right? They wouldn't be able to confirm simply off of how you identify that some sort of intervention's required, because the whole intervention is a biological one. So they're going to. Okay.
It's not necessarily, because psychology falls under part of medicine. So if your psychology and biology don't match, they can use that as an indicator. But not every doctor will do that, but there are some doctors that will.
When you say psychology and biology don't match, all I'm really hearing there is biology and biology don't match. Right? They wouldn't be looking.
I bet Mitch could weigh in on this really well.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you
though.
probably could. We've talked about it before, but it's been a while, and yeah, I'm sure. No pressure as well. I know Mitch is always busy, so this app eats.
I'm pressuring you.
I wanted to throw out another statistic real quick because I got to jump soon, but I did the numbers a while back, like a year or two ago, and I added up, like, including people who question their own sexuality, whether they're bi-curious or whatever, like, from the age of like 14 to 35, it's like 1 in 300 people question their sexuality at all. Not limited to trans ideology. Like, it's a very small group of people that even question their own sexuality at all.
Yeah, well, I would think that ultimately questioning your sexuality would be, right, a form of some sort of like dysmorphia or inconsistent thinking, irrationality, right? Like questioning your sex. That's the whole thing I'm saying here is like, I don't think any identity would justify questioning your sex or your biology. For instance, my chromosomal makeup, right? Well, I don't know how any way that I identify in society, what I dress like, how I act, what my pronouns are, what my name is, all those things have any. How could I pick one and be like, those contradict my chromosomes?
Yeah, but it's not saying it's contradicting your chromosomes. It's just saying that how it relates, it's not in society, does not align to how you would want to relate. That's
But
all.
that seems like just a bias confirmation, like confirmation bias.
In what sense?
Well, because there is no societal indicator on sex. Like you used opening doors earlier as how men should act, but you can obviously see you can see the shortcomings of that.
So that was just an example of
Peace persists.
oh, okay. Yeah, so that was just an example of something that could be considered a gender expression in society.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, opening a door could be considered part of your gender expression. Yeah, and or gender affirmation. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an example of what I gave to show that, for example, if someone doesn't want to participate in that and they feel like it doesn't align to how they want to participate in society, but then because of their sex and how people view them, they're expected to perform that way.
Yeah, totally. Again, though, I'm not seeing the connection between necessary biological intervention in this case, right? There's no point. They couldn't point.
I don't think anyone thinks it's necessary, right?
Well, some do. Some might think that in order to be a man, they need to start changing their biology.
If you're saying in order to be a man, what all you're saying is in order for people to see you as a man, right? In general, then it might involve presenting yourself as a male, because typically when people see a male, they generally consider that person performing or engaging in gender expressions that are usually aligned with what a male is going to perform. So if all you mean is by for them to be a man is for people to see them that way, then it might be necessary.
I don't think you could ever get to necessary. It's possible you could want that. It's possible you could make those changes and that could bring you closer to their identity, but there's no way to claim that it's necessary from a medical standpoint.
I mean, I'm not talking of medical, right? Gender.
I am though. Medical affirmation care is like a form of medical treatment.
Yes, but again, it's a medical treatment for a psychological thing, right?
Sure.
that's based both on the biology and social aspect.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I'm talking about gender, I'm not just talking about the biology.
I know, but when we're talking about medical intervention, we are.
Yes, but we're talking about a medical intervention for biology to influence the gender, right?
Which is impossible because there's no necessary, there's no way to collect data on any necessary
So,
biology influencing your gender. That's the whole point.
so when you say it's impossible, are you saying that there's like a logical impossibility, or that there are people whose psychological state does not change or do not change after they go through that?
I'm saying it would be impossible to get data on whether or not the change is in correlation to the intervention, the biological intervention, or just simply, placebo, or just actual natural changes. There'd be no way to collect that data. So it becomes unscientific.
The same would go
So,
for breast
for anything,
augmentations or breast reductions, or even the
yeah.
example of vasectomy that was accidentally brought up, right? Like somebody got the vasectomy for social reasons, not medical necessity.
No, because the biological intervention isn't to confirm, or affirm a certain identity. You're actually going in to change your biology. I want a vasectomy.
Well,
So that's just a rational. That's if you said this, I want a vasectomy so that I could be closer to being a woman. Well, that would make no sense, right? So if you go to the doctor and you have your reasons, the doctor perform the procedure depending on what it is. If it's a vasectomy and all you need, it's a vasectomy in specific, you don't need to be dying to go through that procedure or whatever. So a doctor, you could have your reasons for your own personal reasons for getting a vasectomy. That doesn't matter, right?
I mean,
It's all good.
I feel like you're still not telling me why it's an impossibility for.
No doctor would use a vasectomy as gender affirming care to be a woman. No doctor would affirm that.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that, but like cisgender
I
women get
don't.
breast augmentation for affirming their gender, right? What else would it be?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused. Are you saying that the people who perform gender affirming surgeries aren't like doctors? Will think that it's gonna help?
Well, they're performing pseudoscience to the degree they think any data can be collected on the results of that procedure. Yeah.
Yes, but again, they are doctors, right? So like,
That doesn't matter to me, man. When you combine hard and soft sciences and you start calling yourself one or the other, I'm skeptical of all that, right? Like just trying to bring humanities into the hard sciences like that, I'm not here for it personally.
it's weird. Would you also consider something like a mental disorder also pseudoscience then?
Yeah, like psychology in general is pretty limited in scope of science. I appreciate it for what it is, but yeah,
That's a pretty wild view.
it's not a hard
Yeah,
science. Well, psychology is a humanities. It's not a hard science. Psychology, the DSM-5 you take is like a physics textbook.
Yeah, but when you say it's not a hard science, like
It's not.
I feel like you're implying something that's not necessarily true.
Well,
So
when it comes to the disagreements in the literature and the discourse, it's a wide open, wild west of opinions, right? The
yeah,
literature
but
and psychology, there's absolutely, when you get to things like physics, there's a lot of consensus. There's not much consensus. You can use authoritative journals, right, to say there's consensus, like the DSM-5 and stuff, but it's an updating encyclopedia of jargon. That's all it is. A lot of it's very pseudoscientific, and a lot of people are misdiagnosed, misprescribed. This psychological space is pretty heavily corrupted. If you look at it honestly.
Don't doctors of psychology and doctors in physics both have PhDs? Aren't they both classified as
They
PhDs?
could. That doesn't really matter to me though. They could. I'm not intimidated by someone with a PhD. They have no authority over the person who disagrees with them with a PhD. Right?
I'm saying that it's not like an SD or an MD. Like they're classified in the same thing.
Yeah, that doesn't really give me. I don't have a preference of credentials personally. Like I don't care what your credentials are, personally. You know.
I mean, it's not about you not caring about what the credentials is, but I feel like when you arguing against it, you're saying something like, for example, you don't think any medical doctor is gonna prescribe something like that, but then um, you're using the authorities of medical doctors about their knowledge on what.
Wait, what I hear is that you're trying to use the authority of a psychologist to override a surgeon.
I'm not,
That's what
I'm
I
not,
hear.
I'm not using the authority of a psychologist. In fact, I did not bring up a psychologist here, right? I brought up the doctor that's doing the surgery.
Well, a surgeon is very unlikely to take into consideration the person's psychology, especially again in Canada.
I mean,
Surgeons here are not psychologists, right? They have nothing to do with psychology.
I
Most surgeons didn't even
understand.
Don't
take
they
a
come to
psychology course.
don't they come to these decisions as a team usually? Like
What do you
everybody
mean?
weighs in,
Of
like
surgeons? Yeah.
like
No, for
like a
sure.
psychologist,
For
a
sure.
surgeon, and like
For sure. Oh no, not you.
they
Typically, yeah, they're not gonna. They're,
all their
no, no.
opinions would be.
Typically, most surgeries don't have a therapist or a psychologist involved. No, no. I can't even
Yeah,
name one that would. I can't even name one that would. Name a surgery that you'd need a psychologist for,
I don't like. Are
or
you
that you've
saying?
ever heard of
Are
that,
you
or
saying?
someone going to surgery with their psychologist information. Never even heard of that.
Please,
Maybe with
please hold on. Please
prescriptions,
hold
but
on.
not
Hold on.
surgeries.
Are you saying that there are no surgeries that requires a psychologist to perform the surgery? Or are you saying that there is no surgery that requires a psychologist to inform the surgery?
I would say very little on the latter. Very, very few surgeries require psychologist input. Maybe like a lobotomy or some
Yeah,
like,
I would
yeah.
also say that trans surgery is also very very little, right?
I don't even think in trans surgeries or gender affirming care a psychologist is necessary, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that's always the case though.
It
I mean,
typically
not.
is. You typically have to get a letter from a psychologist saying that you are indeed
So
trans and do
see
the
how that's kind
procedure.
of weird though to give the psychologist authority over the surgeon, like as if some letter from a psychologist means
Well,
anything to a doctor doing
the
surgery.
surgeon also makes their own decisions
Of
with that input. That's
Yeah,
Exactly.
and you're saying it like it doesn't matter to the doctor, whereas it's considered a requirement. So obviously it matters to the doctor.
Yeah, in the cases that it's considered a requirement, but you got to look at the how politicized our policies are around that, and like, yeah, I don't know how much that credence is legitimized. You know, could just be a politicized thing. I don't
I
think
mean,
most doctors would really take that seriously.
I
But
mean, I can accept like your sentiment with that, but I think you'd have to like at least back it up, right?
well, the backup is simply that no data can be collected on the claims. So no
On which
doctor
claim? On which
who's
claim?
interested in collecting hard data is going to consider any of these sociological terms. They're irrelevant when it comes to data collection.
Yeah. So are you saying that no one can collect data on it, or are you saying that the doctors won't bother to collect data on it?
That the doctors can't collect data on it. It's just impossible.
Well, you're saying they can't collect data on it. Again, we're back to this
No.
impossibility, right? And obviously, you're not saying that's something that's logically impossible. You're saying it's. I don't understand in what sense you're using the impossibility there.
Data collection would be a hard observation, right? With social sciences and sociological jargon,
I don't
there's no
understand.
way to
What
collect
what
hard
do you
data
mean?
on
What do
these
you mean?
terms.
What do you mean by hard observation here?
When we say the population.
Sociologists and psychologists always, not always, but regularly collect hard data for things.
Not related to the sociological jargon, really, though.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. So what?
Okay,
What
so
about?
for instance, if you got a data plug that said 30% of America identifies as homosexual, you think that data is in any way a hard science? You think that data is fallible, maybe? You think that number means really anything? If you read that on a headline, would you just believe it all of a sudden?
I mean, every data is.
What study could possibly get us to that kind of number? There's no study out there that you could possibly do to get us to any kind of number.
Now. I'd say logic throw, right? If someone says to me, right, they have data on the, let's say, percentage of the number of, what did you say?
People who identify as homosexual.
Okay, people who are homosexuals, right? Obviously, I'm gonna look at it, right? Who are the people who identify as homosexuals, right? And then under that definition, there's gonna be data that's collected from requesting the information from people, right? And once that data is collected, there's gonna be some margin of error, right, on that data. So I'm not gonna take the data as 100%, but I'm gonna take it while also understanding that there's a level of margin of error.
Yeah, the margin of error when it comes to these things are way greater than when it comes to the hard sciences, and that's the problem.
So the margin of error is generally calculated on things like sample size. I believe. I could be wrong on that. And like, I think that you would benefit from taking or at least looking up on research methods in psychology. It's really interesting stuff.
I went to UBC for psychology, and I took statistics course related to it.
So why?
There's just certain situations that can't meet your bar for hard data. You know, like anything psychological just can't meet that bar, but yet we still have to do something, right? We have to get the best data we can and make decisions with that.
To be honest, I don't even know what the bar is at this point, right? Because it's the same way, like the way we come to know things is through observation, right? And if you're saying that because of how psychology is, where it mostly depends on observation of humans, and humans are fallible, then it makes the whole branch just, I guess, useless or something.
The rigorous theorems involve incorporating uncertainty into them, right? And this theorem doesn't. That's the problem, right? So the limited terms, to the degree that we can limit the terms and categorize them into sets and bound these things, is to the degree we can make observations. If we do not categorize or limit the bounds or the theorem or the way that we're putting these terms into a premise, there's no way to make observations. So good theorems incorporate the fallibility that you speak of, right? I'm looking for the theorem to highlight its fallibility in genuine discourse so that I can falsify it. And that's what this conversation has led to.
Isn't it always based on the data we collect?
Exactly.
If I were to claim that I'm a woman right now, isn't the goal 9 times out of 10 to convince or demand you change your beliefs about me? Isn't that the solution? It's not about me just saying I'm a woman. That's it. It's saying I'm a woman and now you have to view me as a woman or else you're a bad person. It's controlling people's beliefs, is it not?
Ugh, who let this guy in here? Just kidding. What's up, Shark?
What's up, man? Would you guys disagree?
I don't think it's a requirement, but I think if you're going to be living in a society with some sort of social contract to be polite to people, I think it's just a part of being polite.
Hang on. I don't think it's polite to tell somebody something I don't believe in. I don't think that's polite at all. And if an individual says,
So when you say, sorry,
yeah,
when you say something you don't believe in, um, like how is that related to gender identity here?
because the gender identity is not just this is how I want to express. It's beyond that. If the conversation was just I'm a woman because I identify as a woman, that's it. Hopefully people are nice to me, no problem. But it's not that. It's anyone who doesn't affirm that is a piece of garbage. They're a bigot, they're rude, they're impolite, they're non-social. You're controlling people's beliefs. You're demanding their words change. This isn't about you, it's about controlling other people.
It's so weird because this same argument that you're making, I could just make that same argument about how people just relate in society in general, right? For example, if you're gonna request for something from someone, it will be more appropriate to add please, right? But then if you don't add please, it could be seen as maybe rude and other things that you said, right? I just see that as the same way, where if someone identifies as a particular gender, then it's just the polite thing to call them whatever gender that they identify as.
You can say that it's polite, but do you think that it's polite to force me to say words I don't believe in?
Are you saying you're being forced to say words that you don't?
Yes, socially. Yes, people are being forced socially. Yes.
Hold on. It's weird. So when you're saying that you're being forced to say words that you don't believe in,
Right.
right?
Like listen, like what you're saying is like you want me to treat these people who you're claiming are adults in the same manner that I would if a child picked up a stick and said that they're a wizard.
No, that's not what I'm saying here.
What's the difference?
The difference is it's a social category, so they're asking you to treat them in the social category that's appropriate.
The social category
It's like
that is social. Wait, if it's a social category, then the social category is adult human female.
No, it's not, because gender is not strictly biological.
Yeah, it's not just that.
Okay,
Biological traits are one piece of what identifies somebody.
Socially, what is a woman besides societal expectations, stereotypes, and adult human female? What is it? What are they identifying as?
I don't understand. What do you mean?
If you tell me you're a woman, okay, and I'm supposed to now treat you like a woman, but you don't mean that means adult human female, then you either want me to treat you like a stereotypical female or a woman, right? Or you want me to stereotype women. If it's not one of those three things, what's the fourth option?
You're using stereotype pejoratively, but it's always been like all gender categorization is based on stereotyping. When you pass somebody down the street, you don't know their actual biological sex. You see a set of traits which you loosely categorize into one of the two or three. Or
okay, so then you're just saying trans women are stereotypical women. But what's a stereotypical woman if you don't? Wait, what is a stereotypical woman if you're not a conservative?
When you say stereotypical woman, are you saying like cis women, like the gender cis woman? Or are you talking of something else? I can't hear anything.
I cut out. I can't stereotype women and be progressive. but that's what you're
We all
telling me to
do
do.
every day. That's what I'm saying. Everybody, like,
So I
gender
asked,
is
I
a
asked the question.
stereotype-based thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. You are advocating that women should be stereotyped.
I think we should do away with gender separations completely, but until we have done so, then the categorization.
If you want, this is okay. If you think that we should just abolish gender outright, then you would not continue from this moment on to enable terms like gender. You would say, no, I don't affirm that because I think that these are harmful.
But it's more directly harmful to, like, deny someone the social categorization that they feel is appropriate for their social life.
Why is that more harmful?
I mean, it's, like, directly harmful to their mental health and their interactions with people.
Do you think that gender stereotypes are more harmful or not affirming an individual's gender identity? What's worse? If you want progressive values, then you should want to get rid of stereotypes as much as possible, right?
Not necessarily. I don't see how that follows.
Because we ought to value individuals on a personal level and allow them to come up with their own privatized language system to express their meaning individually. As long as you're going back to a social model, then you're stereotyping based around a group identity instead of an individual identity. You're destroying what it means to be a person. Because instead of, so like when if I say I identify as X, okay? This is my privatized language system. What X means to me may not mean what X.
Sorry. So when you say your privatized language system, are you saying something that's completely different from the language that's being used in general?
All humans have a privatized language system, right? Individually, you have your own meaning based around your cognitive development, social upbringing, technological advancements, personal desires, yada, yada. But you've been indoctrinated to have a social language as well. And what's happening is you're over prioritizing a social language, which is stereotyping people, and undervaluing the privatized language system. So most of the people on this app who are defending trans ideology aren't trans. Most of the people who are trans, when you ask them sincere questions of their personal identity, they can't tell you. They have no idea what they mean. And if an individual is saying, I identify as X, but I don't know what X means, then that means they don't know what they're identifying as on a personal level.
The categories for gender have fuzzy boundaries, and it's hard to specify.
Yeah.
Right, because you're over prioritizing the social standard and not a claim of personal identity. You're glossing over that if I'm claiming to be.
Because you're saying personal identity, but you're forgetting that to have an identity, you have to have some other that's not your identity. So
I have some what?
it still includes the social aspect, no matter how you.
By social, you just mean stereotypes that you want to destroy.
I'm not talking about stereotypes here. I'm just talking about what identity means, right? You can't have an identity without having an other, right?
Are you saying order or other?
Like OTHER.
Okay, what do you mean by other?
So, for you to have an identity, right, you have to have something that is not your identity, correct?
I have no idea what you're saying.
I think they're saying, like, the definition is in relation to what it's not.
Okay, but you're relating to something that personally means something to you. Okay, so if I'm saying I personally identify as a social category, okay, then the social category is just a stereotypical standard of social expectations, which in the very same breath they want to destroy.
I feel like you're missing the point I'm making here.
Okay, don't say that shit to me. Don't do that again.
Okay.
But
I mean, I don't think you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting what I'm saying here, right? Because
you can just say what you believe. Don't make any inferences or assumptions that I'm not understanding. Okay, like
Okay, that's fair.
it's not
That's
necessary.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. So here's what I'm saying. I am saying that to have an identity, you can't just have an identity in a vacuum.
Yeah, that's fine. Everything is relational. I grant that.
Okay.
So
So
the
if
relation is in conjunction with something that you understand personally. Okay, do you agree?
that is fine, but
Okay, so what
what's
does
the
it mean
thing?
to personally identify as a woman or a
That
man?
means that means you're identifying something about yourself in relation to something else.
All right, you're not being specific. You're not telling me anything beyond I'm stereotyping
I,
women.
I mean, are you saying I should define what a woman is? Is
Yeah,
that what you?
every single word that comes out of your mouth, you should be able to define.
I mean, you could just ask me for the definition.
Sure, let's do it. What's a woman?
I think a woman is someone who
I gotta roll out, guys. I got work to do.
Later, brother.
all right to say.
Be safe.
So a woman is someone who I guess engages in gender expressions that's typically aligns to what someone who is born as a female would.
Okay, so let me know if I'm strawmanning you. I understood that as a woman is someone who is stereotyping a specific social model of adult human females.
So let me think about what you say. You said a woman is someone who is stereotyping. Like stereotyping what?
Stereotyping a specific social model of that which conforms to an adult human female, while likely holding the position that stereotyping is wrong.
I think part of the conflict here is the word stereotyping, because in my view at least, stereotyping isn't inherently bad. It's just a classification system. Like there's a lot of different social categories, like I don't know, like maybe a teacher or something. Like you would observe certain expressions from a person and guess that they're a teacher based on the stereotypes
Yeah,
of
because
what a
there's
teacher is.
because we have a standard. Okay, so teachers are individuals who teach. Okay, necessarily. If you're not teaching, then you're not a teacher, right? And nobody is trying to say that I'm a teacher, but I don't support the social standard that implements people should teach.
So
Just
I feel like from what I'm hearing from you, right? Yes, you have a problem with um, people identifying, right, as trans while trying not to engage in or at least dismissing the categories that they're trying to emulate.
I feel that most people who are making claims of identity have no idea what they mean. None.
I mean, it's fair for you to say that, but that's not what we are saying, right? So I don't know how to engage with you on that.
Where are you still confused?
It's not that I'm confused. I'm saying that, like, so when I feel like for you to talk about something like that, you'd have to talk about it with someone who fits the category you're talking about. When you say trans person, right?
Whenever, okay. I would
And
say 99 out of 100 times I have attempted to talk to a trans person. They don't know how to explain how they're identifying, and it becomes an emotional tirade where cis people have to come and speak on their behalf to defend them. It doesn't actually lead anywhere.
I mean, it's fair for you to say, but I don't see how to engage with that.
You don't have a problem with people not being able to explain their identity when making claims that I have to affirm their identity outright. And again, if you're just saying be polite, okay, cool. But understand, I see no symmetry breaker between a child with a stick saying it's a magical wand and they are a wizard, and somebody making a claim that they're a woman. I don't see a difference.
That point's really important.
You,
Just for one sec. That point is really important, not to downplay like the childish situation people might be in. Also, though, as a father, right? Shark, as a father, has a duty to his child that when they say outlandish things, for him to correct them. So we have to find the line here of where that is in terms of gender.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, I
like,
Right?
like my children can be
I can
creative,
tell the
right?
symmetry breaker.
Like there's a distinction between creative play, we're just being silly, versus me actually enabling my son to think he's a wizard, right? It would be dangerous for me to convince my son that this stick has magical powers and he's a wizard, right? Did I cut out? Am I lagging?
Like this isn't really a gotcha. Parents do this. Parents leave the child's Halloween costume on for weeks, right? Or parents let their child dye their hair and give themselves a mohawk and walk around with a blue shitty mohawk for weeks on end, laughing, not realizing that's your 5-year-old, right? Like, why are you letting, or when the child eats, they let them dribble food all over their face and down their clothes, and then all day they wear those dirty clothes around. They never wipe the snot off their nose, right? It's neglect, is what it is.
Like I just took my son to the library. We go to the library every week, and he really wanted this book about monsters and mythological creatures like Cyclops and whatever. Okay, and now I'm very apprehensive about that because he's been talking about monsters and scary this. So instead of just letting him read it outright, I let him get the book and we talked about it. And I said, hey, are monsters real? What does it mean for something to be real? And keep in mind, he's 5 turning 6. Okay. And so we're analyzing, are monsters real or fake? Well, they're fake in reality, but they're conceptual. So they have power if you think about them. Okay. I broke down that he could draw monsters and he could draw creatures, and maybe the monsters are misunderstood, or maybe the monsters are chaotic. Maybe the monsters are uncontrollable. So we're analyzing that these are stories, and that the stories are going to be conceptual, and that he can pair. It's a breakdown of it. But if I'm not responsible with the information that he's perceiving, then maybe he believes monsters are real outright. Maybe he believes Cyclops is real outright, because I'm just saying, like, if he says, no, look, Cyclops is real. Okay, cool. Yep, I agree with you. I think that's destructive. I think it's neglectful. It's not.
We could be even more destructive, and we could start saying, you're a little monster.
Oh yeah, be like, yeah, that's imagine what I was telling my wife the other day. People are just putting identities on people, especially children, and not understanding. If you walk around with that identity, it's going to shape and mold you because you believe it. That's the antecedent to what happens next.
Yeah, so what we want to do is say, you're the hero. You're the hero. You're not the monster, right? The stories we tell our children, the stuff we expose them to, we are in one way or another indoctrinating them. And if we cannot stand back and say, well, they'll learn as they go. You have a responsibility as a parent to indoctrinate your children into the good, into the true, right? And to neglect that, and to say that you're being an open-minded, good, progressive parent because you don't have a fence to stand on, right, is antithesis to parenting and education.
My job is to teach him how to be open-minded and thoughtful, considerate. Rule number 1 in my house is considerate. Rule number 2 is be considerate. From those points forward, then anything is possible. But if you're not considering it and you're not being considerate, then you're likely not being rational. You're not being thoughtful. And by the way, Dopamine wants to join. He's cool.
All right. So, yeah, you talked about like the symmetry breaker, right?
Yep.
For the wizard stuff. In terms of just straight up making a claim about an identity, right? I don't think there's a symmetry breaker, but in terms of the trans identity itself, I think what's going on is we already live in a world where we actually engage in that type of social relation, right?
Yeah, but just because we do something doesn't mean we ought to continue doing it. Like, my son had long hair. We just cut it because summer's coming up, right? But he had long hair. I had long hair. And I was doing silly hair. I put in, I don't know what they're called. They're not bobby pins. What are like the rubber band things that you put in your hair? What are those things called?
Wait, hold on.
Ponytail things? The ponytail
Hair
bands.
ties.
Yeah, hair ties. Yeah, so I put a hair tie in my hair, and I said it's silly. He put a hair tie in his hair, and he said it's silly. And then he said, I'm a girl, right? And then I looked at him, and I said, what's a girl? And then he said my daughter's name, and I said, you can put hair ties in, and you're still a boy. I said, boys can wear hair ties. And he goes, oh, I'm a boy with a hair tie, and it's silly. And I said, yep.
Oh man. Wow. That's so cool. Yeah.
Right.
What a lesson. What an instant, easy lesson and validating him. What a validation for him.
Right. He gets to still wear the hair tie. He gets to still be silly. He doesn't have to change his identity. He understands the distinction, right? And if like same thing for like nail polish, right? Because he's very curious. He wants to be involved with everything. So if my wife doesn't really paint her nails or anything, but if maybe she wants to paint my daughter's nails and he's there, right? And maybe I'll do one of my nails and he does one of his nails. Does that make us girls or women? No. It means that just because society says only women do this, I'm not going to enable that because I think that that's harmful. Your formula, in my opinion, is backward.
Wait, first of all, I don't think there should be anything like genders. Okay.
Okay, then you wouldn't enable these concepts.
It's not about what I'm doing right now is not about enabling the concepts.
Yes,
right?
It is. Listen, please don't undermine or devalue your belief system, because if you do, then there's going to be a performative contradiction in your actions. And that's what's happening.
Well, you don't know what I think, though.
You literally just said you don't support gender. You want to get rid of gender. You just said it.
I never said I don't support gender. I said I want to get rid of gender.
Okay. You want to get rid of gender.
I want to get rid of gender, but at the same time, I understand that when we're creating an identity and we live in a social like obviously we live in a place where we have to socialize with each other. We have to create classifications, right? That will enable us to.
The classifications don't have to be woman. You could literally you can make up your own word. You can say, okay, like watch this. I identify as a Turner.
Say it doesn't have to be woman.
Yeah.
Right.
How about this? I identify as a Turner. What's your response to me?
Okay, I mean, can I make my point?
Sure.
Okay, so I am not saying that it has to be gender, right? But the problem is the way we are defining gender. We're defining gender as what's typically expected of someone that's of let's say a classification, right? And that classification could be based on sex, gender expression, and things like that.
But just to be clear, you're doing that. We aren't doing that. You insist on doing that.
You're the one who's doing it while claiming you want to get rid of that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You are a walking contradiction.
I feel like you guys are not even letting me speak here. Right. Can you tell me the contradiction between thinking that something should be gotten rid of and living in a place where you can't actually help but do the thing?
Well, the contradiction is going to be we should get rid of gender, we should not get rid of gender. Right? Every time you enable it, you are acting.
I never said we shouldn't get rid of gender.
No. but with your actions, you're saying it. By enabling gender, you're affirming its existence. Your claims and your actions are contradictory.
Hold on. Are you saying that gender doesn't exist in the sense that we don't identify group of people with certain classifications that uphold certain gender stereotypes?
No, I'm saying that your beliefs and your actions contradict.
What's my belief?
Rid of gender.
And what's my action?
Affirming gender.
My action is affirming gender?
Yep, the thing you want to get rid of.
I think you're conflating different senses of the word gender there.
Yes, like that's not what I'm doing.
Okay, is it true he wants to get rid of gender?
Yes, as a categorization system with the degree of weight that it has in our current society, we want to get rid of that. But insofar as that system does still exist, we want to affirm someone's place in that categorization with where it should be.
You want to affirm somebody's place in a category you're trying to eliminate?
Yeah, because while the categories do exist, we want them to be used appropriately.
Okay, so just to clarify, you would say, I affirm your identity within a category, but just so you know, I want to destroy your category. That's what you're saying?
I don't think we can fully destroy the category
I didn't say whether we can. You want to. You have a desire to destroy the category that you're affirming they identify as or within.
Not in its entirety. At least I don't. I don't think it's possible, really.
Okay, so let's go. My question goes back to, I identify as a Turner. What do you say to me?
What is a Turner?
Exactly. Very good. Okay.
Because that's not a social category that already exists, and so it brings
exactly.
No utility.
That's why I have to
right,
ask.
because we all agree that the social category are things that are harmful and not focusing on the individual's identity of expression. And a Turner is not something that you guys want to destroy, even if you know it's not pragmatic to do so.
But in order to engage with things, we have to be able to put them into categories. That's just a fact of life.
Categories that we want to exist in the future. Categories that you believe in, that are good. Categories that you want to enable and encourage and affirm.
Yeah, and like
you don't want to affirm the stereotypes of women.
I mean, to some degree, it's not like we can't completely erase it.
Okay, but when somebody's identifying as a woman, are you not enabling the stereotypes of the social model of women?
Perhaps in some sense of the word, but I don't think that necessarily means supporting the continuation of relying heavily on those categorizations.
You're relying on them to keep identifying as it.
Yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't exist entirely. I'm saying
you're affirming the person, right? Because listen, man, I think that you're virtuous in wanting to affirm someone in a broken society. I get that, right? But it is contradictory to affirm somebody within a category you don't believe in.
I really think
affirm a contradiction. Just affirm a contradiction.
Yeah, or affirm a social category that you think is harmful.
I think you're taking this in all
I think one thing that we should be clear about, I do not think that gender is harmful.
Could you reword that about what you do think?
I mean, I'm saying I think gender itself is not harmful.
Right. Instead of speaking in the negation, could you say that sentence while affirming what you do think it is?
I just said what I think it is.
You expressed what you think it is not. I'm asking if you can express what you think that it is.
See, I think gender is just a classification. I don't think gender itself is harmful or not harmful.
You think that it's just neutral?
Yes, I think it's just a classification.
Then why do you want to get rid of it?
When I say I want to get rid of it, I mean it in the sense that the strict classifications that we have right now, right? Where it seems like someone who, let's say, identifies or engages in, let's say, some gendered expressions that fits a particular category, we can't say that person is but that identity. And if the person wants to switch to start engaging with let's say different gendered expression,
Are you just
that fits
are you just
different.
saying you want everyone to be able to be gender fluid?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Nice, and there wouldn't be men or women. Gender
And
fluid would come down, right? Try to think long term. Pretend that we have a society that is fully gender fluid. All right? Fully gender fluid is going to value an intrinsic, internal, privatized language system of identity.
again, I don't think that's possible,
Why?
because when you're engaging in like a social system, right, you still need to be able to.
Wait, hang on. The gender would be gender freedom. That's what everybody is unified by.
I am not saying there can't be gender freedom here.
Okay, so then the social unification is gender freedom.
Can you let me say what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, take your time.
I am saying that we can be gender fluid, right? Meaning we can engage in whatever gendered expressions I want to engage in. But when we're talking about engaging with other people, right, in a social sense, we'll still need to be able to at least, it could be depending on the context of how we're engaging with them. So just because we have gender fluidity does not mean that we can't say, oh, someone is expressing or acting in a gendered way that aligns with how a man would act in a particular scenario that a person is in.
If we know everybody in society personally, why do we need these generalizations?
Because we don't know everyone individually.
Wait, no, yeah, that's right. So what you're saying is in an impersonal society, you need this. Are we not personal beings? Are we not moral agents? Is the whole
What do you mean?
like do you understand the main claim of the main claim of our identity is person. That is the main claim of our identity.
I lost track when you said something I did not say. Right, that was what I was saying. I never said that. Can you repeat what you said again?
Yes, in a personal society, why do you need these classifications that are generalizing persons?
Okay, what do you mean by personal society here?
Yeah, where everybody knows each other on a personal level. That we are viewing each other as individual moral agents that are unified in a free world.
And then you're saying that if we see each other as,
why would we need? Yeah, why would like let's say this.
Let me finish.
You're not very good at this back and forth thing.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, this is like I'm new to all this. So if you're saying that if we see other people as individuals who have their own autonomy and are moral agents, right? You're saying that if we see people as that, then we shouldn't have they wouldn't have some gendered expressions. Is that what you're saying?
They would have an individual gender identity, and they express that individually.
They would have no need to like identify themselves in any particular way.
Yeah, they just are who they are, and we learn who they are. And an individual who can't express who they are, right? Then we recognize that individually. But what happens is you're generalizing these people who can't explain how they're identifying, and you get these other people who are virtue signaling and become aggressive and angry, belligerent, and violent on behalf of individuals who can't articulate what they mean by the words they say.
No, 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 no. I don't agree with what you just said.
Which
I feel
portion?
like
Which
I
portion?
feel like
Which portion do you
I feel like
disagree
you
with?
said
It
I
happens
feel
every
like
day.
you said something like there is some sort of difference between a
The
personal.
main people defending
Hold
trans
on,
ideology are not trans.
hold on. Let me finish. Again, that's not a discussion that's like I don't see how that discussion is
Because it's a
related.
claim of personal identity. I can't tell you how logic identifies.
Again, if you want to talk about the people who are trans and want to defend themselves or whatever their ideology is, you can talk to them, right?
Well, I can
No,
try to.
I
It's
saw this.
basically never successful.
Okay, and that's fine. So
It's
I
not
don't I
fine.
don't understand, I don't understand what that has to do with me right now.
Because when somebody's making a personal claim of identity, it should be personal, meaning that it is the individual's responsibility, opportunity, and freedom to express what they mean.
And that's fine. I don't understand what that has to do with me.
You're promoting a generalization of social standards in an impersonal society that is
Again,
glorifying stereotypes. And I'm
again,
saying,
again, let's go back.
that
Hold on,
we should be.
let's
Listen,
go
brother.
back.
Listen,
Just,
respectfully. You
just,
you
a-
cry.
just
Listen, brother. Respectfully, you cry when you get interrupted right after monologuing, but then you interrupt repeatedly.
because you're saying things I'm not saying. That's why I keep having to interrupt. Because every time you say something, I'm saying that's not what I'm saying.
Has
You
anyone
still
ever
continue,
has anyone
you
ever told you
continue
that you're
making.
has anyone ever told you that you're pedantic?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's a problem. And it's a problem because you think that I'm obligated to say the same words instead of figuring out what we mean. I'm focused on what we mean, and you're so focused on us saying the exact same words.
So,
One thing I'd
so
really
when
like to say here really quickly is that what I find like dumbfounding is that, well, often when a sentence is produced and you don't agree with it, that's what I find dumbfounding, because none of these sentences that, like Shark said, about being able to express, having the opportunity to express your individual identity, all that sounds like the argument you want to make. I don't know why you would want to disagree with like the
because
majority of things being said.
because it said that it says something about impersonal society, right?
Yes,
Versus a personal society.
yes, the personal society would be able to identify people by their names.
What does that mean?
It means that we would understand the complex dynamics and importance of names, valuing the words as truly meaningful, and then instead of generalizing on a social scale, which gives us less information personally, we focus on a social model where the government works for the persons or people, protects us so that we can personalize, so that we can grow families, so that we can figure out what we're good at. If little Lucy down the street is amazing at painting, let her be the best painter ever. She doesn't have to go and work in a coal mine or anything like that. Let her be free. We have the resources, we have the technology, we have the ability to be free. But you think that just because we live in this society today, we need to glorify it or enable it at all. No, we need to be persons because that's what we are. You're a person.
Okay, can I talk now? Okay. I never said we weren't people. Okay. What I'm trying to understand is you're talking about a personal society and an impersonal society. And then you mentioned name, right? And then I asked you, what do you mean by name? But the definition you're giving me for what means by name, I still don't know how that relates to things that gender would work for.
Okay, so the name is going to be the personal, universal identity. Let's start there. Do you agree?
When you say personal universal identity,
Unchanging, yes. I'll give you different words. Individual, unchanging self.
again, again, I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
I think that's the problem. You don't know what a person is.
I know what a person is.
What's a person?
A person is someone with autonomy, right, and an agent with a mind.
Right. So an individual agent. Yeah. So an individual moral agent is identified as an unchanging being. That's the name. And we want to be a society that encourages growth, understanding, redemption, literacy, education, values, morals, ethics.
All right, can I speak now? Again, what is a name? If you're telling me
Hey,
that
Logic, do you want to try? Because I
if
ran out
you're
of words for that.
if you're telling me that a
We're like
name
3 days
is
deep
just
at this point, bro.
if you're telling me that a name is just an individual that has moral agents, that has a mind, like, oh, how is that related to gender here?
What? Because gender is going to be focused on the individual expression instead of an impersonal social dynamic that you agree you want to destroy or get rid of.
Yeah, you keep going back to this idea of like the social norms being part of the gender identity, which is why he's separating. No, it's a personal expression of identity, not related to norms. So we're defining semantically these terms differently. And the contention with your definition is that, well, there's a problem with stereotyping, right? People's biology to social norms. That's like a really dark, dystopian way of looking at people. And I don't know how you aren't constantly like recognizing that when you push back on really anything that's been said so far, because like everything that's been said is so bipartisan and humanitarian and like non-controversial.
Yeah,
But
I
then
would say
every
that.
single time something's said, you're like, "Can I talk now?" And you like insist on trying to push back, but
Yeah, I
don't.
think
Then there's never a real
No,
contention, really.
okay, I'm gonna ask a question, right? Try so that I can try to understand what you're saying, because I've been asking what a name is, but it seems like that's not something that is gonna help here, right? So
A
let's assume
name is a word that is representing something that is for an individual thing that is real. And for personal agents, names are one of the most important things. It's an expression of an unchanging identity, a universal.
okay. So I'm gonna ask a question.
Wait. Do you
Let's
disagree with that? Do you disagree with that, or do you agree with that? Like,
I mean, I disagree about the unchanging part of the
What
identity.
you think? Okay, so let's say that my wife gets into a car accident, right, and brain damage, and she forgets me. She has different hobbies. Da da da. Do you think that's a different person? I hold that it's the same identity. I hold that that's my wife. If she wants to move to Russia and be with a different man, that's fine. It's still the same person. I'm not gonna love her less. I'm not gonna say
If,
like, and bro, like
if
Logic, bro. Some of the people who answer that, they say no, it's a different person.
see, if all you're saying about it being the same person is that they have the same biology as before the accident, then that's a different person.
Well, obviously that's not what I'm saying, right? Your
So
biology, your
what do you
biology,
mean?
your
So what?
biology. Stop. Your biology is changing every single day, every moment of every day. You're changing. You are an expression of time in a time machine. You are change, right? So,
Oh,
like,
but you just said it's unchanging.
yes, the identity, a metaphysical identity, right? The universal.
Again,
I'm not
right?
making biological claims. I'm not stuck in the physical world. I'm not there with you.
Oh, see, I think this is where you lost me now, right? Because I keep trying to figure out what you mean by name and stuff, but it seems like when you're talking about name, you're talking more about something
It's a metaphysical category, right?
that's a metaphysical category, and to me, I don't understand how.
Okay. Your brain was underdeveloped at 5 years old, right?
hold on. I'm not.
No,
I'm not.
this is
I'm not
important. This is
disagreeing
important. I
with.
promise.
I'm
I
not.
promise.
I'm not
So at
disagreeing
5 years
with
old,
you.
hang on. At 5, you said that if the brain changes from a car accident, it's a different person, right? At 5 years old,
I
your brain.
was asking to clarify. I said, when you say it's a different person, do you mean this? And then you said, no, it's a metaphysical
Right.
category.
Yeah, it's a metaphysical
Now I
identity.
understand
Okay.
what you mean
Oh, do you agree
by
to that?
name, right? I mean, I don't necessarily have to agree, right? But I can accept the definition that you're using for
Well, no, I
name.
don't want you to accept. No. I don't do this granting or accepting anything, right? This is where conversations get disingenuous and where we go and we talk for the next 10, 20 minutes. And then you go, no, I don't agree to that because you stopped believing right now. So no, I'm not going to just say you accept it. I don't want you to pretend anything. I want to know what you believe. I want to know what you understand. When I'm saying name, it's going to be representing a metaphysical identity to self.
Okay. When you say metaphysical identity to self, what is self here?
The self is going to be an individual conscious experience.
So
Or
when you're talking about
qualitative experience, that's fine too.
so when you're talking about name, you're just saying the identity of your identity that's related to your conscious experience.
Yeah, the person is self-aware that they are something. They exist individually as something. Yep. And
That
and regardless
that's
of
what
brain
I'm
and
that's what I'm
regardless of
asking.
brain development, it's the same person.
Again, that's what I'm asking. What's that self there? Because I feel like you want to say it's the conscious
The self
experience, but then you
is
want to say
yeah,
it's
you're identifying, hang on, I'm telling you. You're identifying the self by naming it. It's named. The
yeah.
self
What is the
the
self?
name is the self.
So now the name is not just an identity that's related to something. The name is
Yes, the
what you
personal
call that thing.
yeah. Rocks have names, right? But they don't have personal names.
Okay, again, so when you say it's what you're using to identify that thing, what is that thing that you're calling self?
Hey, yeah, Logic, you want to try?
It won't ever end. It's kind of one of the reasons I
But
come up
no, but
here.
like,
That's
what's
why
the, but
that's why I
why
wanted
but why
that's
won't it
why
end? Like, is he
that's why
not
I wanted
like
that's why
Logic? Is
I
he
wanted to
not a
grant you.
person? Does he not want to understand? Is it me? Like, what's happening right now?
I think it's
You're
like, well,
saying you're
I
saying
get
what
religious with it, and I think that it's like a test for, I guess, me. I'm being tested. You're being tested. It's a test.
But he's a person, right?
Yeah, but how we communicate with each other, I don't know. It requires such grace that.
Are you sure he's a person?
Well, no, there's that. I'm not sure of that, but no, I assume he is. I meet. He's more level-headed than the average person I meet in my day.
Well, yeah, at least he's
Yeah.
he's calm. He's just not very understanding.
I am trying to understand. The problem is you mentioned something about being unchanging, right? And then we went down this rabbit hole of okay, what's unchanging? You're saying okay, the unchanging stuff is the change, which is somehow related to the name.
No. Change. What, the unchanging stuff is changed. No. Change is a temporal notion, all right? Whether I was 5 years old with an underdeveloped brain, 15 with a partially underdeveloped brain, 25 with a generalized developed brain, and around 30 where I think that my brain is at its peak, right? I've been the same person. It's always been me.
Yeah, but again, when you're saying you've been the same person, right? I asked the question about what you meant by person, right? If it was just biology and you said no,
Yeah, person is going to be, right? A person is going to be a personal individual substance, and a person is going to be that which is in alignment with a rational nature.
again, that I don't think that's telling me much, right? About what I don't think that's telling me much about what the person is. And see, I'm willing
You know what I think it is?
to
You know what
I
I think
am
it is, Logic?
hold
I
on.
think that he has no interest to like learn from me. And so instead of analyzing my words as meaningful, He's just analyzing his own words over and over and over again, putting his definitions on the words. And it's just a cycle.
I am not putting I haven't defined anything yet that's related to the self here, right? All I've asked you to do is tell me what this self is. And it's fine for it to be a metaphysical category, right? That just, to me, is what's a metaphysical category for me is just something that I cannot understand, right? It's not something that you can necessarily point to for me, right? It's not something that you can like give me some way to actually really categorize it in a way that makes sense to me, right? And that's why I was willing to just go along with your definition without
I understand that you're just, I don't know if you're aware you're saying this, right? You're saying it's not possible for you to understand me.
It's not that I'm saying it's not possible for me to understand you. I'm saying that the things you're saying about, for example, a self, right? And I'm asking you what a self is. And you're not like, for example, is there something about a self that's okay? Maybe this is the best way to get around this. Do you have like some properties or things that you could use to categorize what a self is?
Yeah, sure. First person self-awareness within a rational kind or nature.
Sorry, can you repeat that? The audio was a bit off.
First person experience of self-awareness or qualitative experience in alignment with rational nature or kinds.
Okay, so you're defining the self as an experience.
Yeah, I'm experiencing something, right? Like when I say me, it's just going to be self-awareness, awareness of something from a first person experience, right? It's going to be personal to me.
I get that, but again, I'm asking, are you defining the self as experience?
Only that one word? No, that's not informative enough. Plants have an experience.
So yes, I'm not saying that it is that's just what you said, right? Because I feel like what you're doing is you're defining self as something, right? First person experience that I guess aligns with rationality, right? Which is an experience.
I'm going to jump in here and just say a couple things, a bit of a trauma dump. Recently, I've had a friend from childhood descend into the street degeneracy, taking partying beyond partying. And his parents issued a police report for him missing for 2 weeks, and I happened to be the one 3 days ago that ran into him in the streets. Basically, smoking meth in the alley and shooting up, and he lost his sense of self. There's two ways to kind of look at this, right? The social pressures, the social stigmas, the social taboos. He doesn't fit into society anymore. He's not clean, he's not showered, doesn't care about society anymore. But that's not the in particular issue, right? All the societal pressures, those are one thing. But there's certain outcasts of society that still function, right? What's detrimental about my childhood friend and what's so heartbreaking, and why I bring it up now, because even as we are talking, I'm having trouble focusing on anything except for my recent trauma. I'm at the spot right now that I came across him a couple days ago. And it's the detrimental part is his sense of self. He's to the point of complete irrationality, right? And he's lost himself. It's not the taboos, right? It's not that he's partaking in crime or doing things antisocial. That's not the problem. It's that when you talk to him, he's gone. He's a shell of a human obsessed with his next hit. That's all his life's going to be about until he can reorient his person into some sort of rational, right, attempt at realigning his actions with what he wants in life. I don't know if that was just a bit of a rant or really where I'm going with that.
It was beautiful,
Yeah.
man. It was beautiful.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you, man.
It's the importance of, like, when society devalues persons, then there's a likelihood that we do not fulfill our rational nature, right? We have to work together as a social species to validate and verify personal identities. But when a person is identifying solely as a social standard that you agree is harmful, then they are unintentionally harming them because their language system is still not developed enough for them to express their identity.
Yes. It's a drop ball in education. It's a drop ball in his nurturing. It's a drop ball in parenting. It's a drop ball in the community. All of these things have dropped the ball in allowing him to express himself. And so he's traumatically lost in the streets without a self-identity. He's a lump in the corner of an alley somewhere, you know? And the real heartbreaking part about this is he's an absolute legend. Prodigy. I knew him since he was 12. He's about 26 now. I'm 33. The kid is a prodigy. Could do anything on a bike. I'm tearing up as I'm saying this, honestly, because it's like, yeah, absolute prodigy, man. And like, it's so fucked up to see him in that scenario. And so, yeah, I think that the only comeback is some sort of self-identity, some sort of ability to reconcile the contradictions in his life. His thinking is not clear, right? He's a shell of himself. Anyways, thank you for listening to all that trauma dump.
Hey man, we all have trauma. It's important to do it rationally, right? There's a difference between saying validate my trauma and just allowing your trauma to be heard.
Yeah, and you know what? The most interesting part about the evening I spent with him was I stayed out in the alleys with him until about 4 a.m. Throughout the night, other people came and said what's up, and because I kind of like let it spread to my close friends to kind of say, you know, I found this guy, come see what's up. Everyone had their own strategy and attempt at helping, right? Some people come with their hard love. Some people come with blankets and food. Some people sit down, have a beer with them. There's all these different attempts, but in the end of the day, they're all kind of just self-projections. No one helped them. We all went home to our beds. And I found that really interesting too, in a weird way. Like, we try our best to help, but in a way we all fall short, and it's kind of like only we got to be careful not to project our own ideas of how to help people, I suppose. Right. I don't know.
Right. This goes back to me saying that most of the people trying to speak up for trans people are cis, right? They're trying to make claims of their identity instead of addressing the social failures to value persons and give them words, rationality, coherency to figure out what it means to be a self, what it means to be rational, what it means to have desires, what it means that we understand that we could do things, but that doesn't mean we should do things, even if we prefer to do things. This conversation is not easy. It's not, oh yeah, well, let's just go take a walk and figure all this out. But on a social level, when you are continuously devaluing what it means to be a person, it's not helping people. It's not actually getting to the root of the social failures. You're putting a Band-Aid over cancer.
I feel like you have a contradiction there where you're talking about supporting individual personhood and the individuality, but that you want to force people into what you think their gender is instead of letting them be.
There's a tension there, because when someone's self-identity is destructive, as a society, we want to have the responsibility to help these people. So there is a contradiction, bro, right? I cannot be content with myself just, I guess, letting my friend degenerate in the streets. Do I have a choice? Can I really do anything? No. Does that feel right? No. There needs to be more done. This is an area of improvement, both in myself and my culture and my friends and in him, right? But I see him as a reflection of myself somewhat. I'm immersed in this culture. I went and had a beer with him. I didn't know what else to do. Maybe was I coping my own way by sitting in the alley and having a beer with them? I don't know. Like, what was that? Was that enabling? Was it friendly? Was it good to do that and maybe normalize it a bit? I don't know the answers, man. Struggling through it.
And just to clarify, right? So like, I'm not trying to force anyone to do anything, right? If somebody identifies as a woman, cool, okay? But then if the follow-up question is about especially controlling my words, validating their existence, telling me that I must do something, well, I want to understand, right? Because for me, being rational necessitates understanding, right? To some degree. And so if somebody says they're a woman, I'm just going to ask them, what does that mean to you? What's a woman? Because I think they're more than a social category. I think they're more than stereotypes. And if
but that's part of it, right? It's not the whole definition of who they are, but it's part of it.
Being trans becomes your main identity.
That's a claim, but I don't think that's supported. I think maybe some people make it more of a thing, but most trans people just want to live like a normal person. They have to do a certain amount of stuff to kind of like resituate themselves in that social categorization, and that takes up a lot of their time and energy, which can seem like making it too much a part of their life. But then after a certain point, then they just want to get on with life. And for the record, I'm a non-binary person under the umbrella of trans, so that's part of why I'm up here.
But non-binary just means that you're not identifying as male or female, man or woman, right?
Right.
Right. And so I could just ask you, instead of saying non, because I think that speaking in the negation is harmful. So things like atheist, I think is harmful because it's saying you have a lack of belief. I think that when somebody says, I don't think, this is irrational because you are thinking something. So whenever somebody says they're non-binary, my question becomes, if you're not something, what are you?
I'm missing how it's harmful to speak in the negation. Maybe I just got distracted while you were saying it, but what is the harm?
Because life is, you are. It is. The word is expressing things that are. If you're saying things that are not, then what is there for me to analyze? Nothing.
The distinction from the contrary, right? Like, it still gives you some information, and it can be hard to positively define things in a clear way, but you can at least give some definition to it.
Yeah, when your language system is in the negation, it becomes almost impossible to define these terms. But when you speak in an affirming manner, then we can create more clarity with the meaning. You're just telling me you're not something, okay? What are you?
So if I were to say agender, would you say that's still in the negation and not positive?
Agender is going to be what?
Would you say that's still speaking in the negative and harmful?
How would you define that?
Just like without gender.
That's still negation. You said without, not, lacking.
Or genderless, I guess, is another wording of the same thing. But
yeah, this is my point, right? There becomes an unintentional language system that is saying what is not rather than what is, and rational beings have the capacity to express what is.
I still don't see how it's harmful to do the other. Like, it's like, where's the harm in that? I just don't get it.
The harm is members of the rational kind, especially those who are rational, have an obligation to express what is so that other rational individuals are capable of understanding and that irrational things are protected and taken care of.
Yeah, but describing what something is not is part of the information that defines what it is. It's not all of it, but...
Okay, what are you without a negation?
That's
Who
very
are
loaded. It's hard to answer in a concise way. I don't know.
That's why I think it's harmful. You don't know.
Like, you also have the same problem, don't you? Like, how would you define who you are?
Well, you're going to think this is religious, but I hate religion, so we'll start off with that. I think I'm made in the image of the Word, right? I think that I am a moral agent that is being tested with the gift and mercy of freedom.
But that just defines every person, not you specifically.
Well, me is going to be specific to my name, which is what I tried to explain to him earlier, which is still an affirmative. I'm claiming that my identity is. So if you agree that you are made in the image of the Word, then you're unified by the Word. You should mean what you say what you mean. The Word is, and your word should be a representation of what is.
And again, I would say what something isn't is also informative of what it is.
If I tell you I don't have a truck, do you think that this is rational if my attempt is to express my mode or form of transportation to you?
In that scenario, there's an easy alternative that provides more information concisely. But in the other example, there isn't a concise positive definition.
But I provided you one.
Which one? Maybe I lost track.
Individual moral agent made in the image of the Word.
But again, that's
I am a person. Yeah, I am a personal moral agent, and I have a name.
But that's still just describing every person. It's not telling me about you specifically.
Oh, so like if you want to get into, so no problem. If you want to get into my attributes or my preferences or my desires, no problem, right? That would be a different, that would be a different category of my identity, right? The identity itself is going to be name, main beliefs of my ontology, and then from there, preferences, desires, urges, regrets, things like that, lessons.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, I feel like we're kind of at an impasse here on this.
Yeah, what I notice is that like skepticism runs its course. Skepticism is just one sort of method of rational thinking, and that it involves doubting and negation and those kinds of things. But there's a whole nother realm that I think is just more conversational, which is through this lens of sort of faithful intuition, right? Being willing to put forward some ideas to be criticized and be wrong, and affirming your beliefs even though they might be wrong. It takes a brave step, right, through the rational discourse to put forward your beliefs. Most people are hypnotized into skeptical thinking because they've been bullied and put down for exercising the other sides of rationality, which have to do with, faith, hope, those kinds of things, not empirical things, right? The way that you might go with your bias, talking through your bias and not being ashamed of that, putting forward in a way that can be criticized, that kind of thing.
Okay to say, I don't know, right? But if you're always, starting off as being skeptic is an honest experience. Resorting to hyper-skepticism and just attacking somebody else's belief is a cancerous plague. It's a tumor on a productive conversation. You should be able to express what you believe is, are, will be, should be, can be, whatever. I do the same thing, and then we analyze the words.
Like think about this position, Shark. You're being accused. You walk into a store and there's police already there, and they say, "Hey, there was a murder in this location. Do you drive a red truck?" You wouldn't have to provide really any other thing other than the negation. You could just say, "No, I don't even drive a red truck. Look it up. I don't even have a red truck. Don't have it registered. Look, I'm in this vehicle today." Well, right there, that negation provided a lot of relevance through the lens of skepticism. See? So the whole conversation setting is one of skepticism. You want to defend your not guilty. That's not a conversational setting, right? Most situations are not like that.
Even with that though, it starts off with the police saying our suspect has red truck.
Oh, great point. There's an affirmation that they're using as evidence to prove the case, and your negation, you're absolutely right. Yes.
You're always starting with an affirmation. If somebody just says "nuh-uh" over and over and over again, who cares? Like, that's not green. That's not blue.
Furthermore, they would have to affirm that you actually don't have a red truck. There would have to be some way, like you could be lying, you could have stolen a red truck. So how are they going to know, oh, yeah, you're driving that, right? There would have to be some affirmation to the end, even to the negation, right? To prove a negation, there's some affirmation on the end. We cannot have empty skepticism, is the point.
Right.
Empty skepticism leading us to nowhere. Affirmation is somewhat a form of confirmation bias, or faith is the way I say it, but that's what grounds the whole skeptical methodology. We're going somewhere with it, rather than just letting skepticism run us astray.
Yeah, what would a skeptic talk about if no one made a claim?
They'd be silent, and I've said this a lot. Another way of thinking about this is, if someone just always agreed, they would never talk. Skepticism employs this like disagreeability.
Hey, you know what's funny? The only reason hyper-skeptics talk is because people believe.
They're privileged to be part of the conversation due to other people's beliefs.
Yeah, they're not even a part of the conversation, because the only reason they're involved is because of their ability to be skeptical about it. But they're that's crazy.
Like very similar to the situation of the police. Imagine if you denied having a red truck, and then someone in the back's like, I have a red truck. It's like, bro, shut the fuck up. Like, they're looking into a murder case. Like, if you want to be involved in this now just because you own a red truck, like, I don't know. Like, just walk away, bro. Like,
I used to have a red truck. How long ago was it?
Yeah, like, walk away, bro. I don't know. This is not your chance to be part of this. Like, people get involved in the conversations they don't even want to be part of. It's like, why even involve yourself? If you're so skeptical, why be part of this conversation, really, at the end?
I think that the way that you become more rational is to provide a more rational standard of what is, can be, should be, ought to be, whatever. But if you're not speaking in the affirmative, then all you're capable of doing is destroying.
Yes, and your destruction is not going to be based on anything. You're going to be...
It's just based on doubt.
Yes.
Like, it's doubt, and there's this word, I don't know what it is, but people on this app, they just debate as a marathon, and they'll keep going and going and going just to tire the other person out. They'll debate for 5 hours nonstop just because they want somebody to talk to, just because that it's a drug to them. It's an addiction. I actually think, I have a theory on this, some people debate because it's a fetish for them.
Dude, that's so dark, because the very close cousin to that, right, is why you and I have resilience and can last 5 hours, but it's not because of a weird fetish. It's because of genuine, like, love and genuine connection and intimacy. Like, I am searching for intimacy, and that does give me a great resilience to a 5 hour debate.
That's a good word. That's a crazy word right there, but I don't disagree. We're being intimate right now.
And that fuels us. Similar to the person who's perverted in their fetish.
Oh my goodness, it's linguistic intimacy.
Yeah, which fuels you, because like I can last 5 hours too, but I don't want to be part of someone's sick fetish if that's what's feeding them. I'm looking for genuine connection and intimacy and those kinds of things. I don't want to be abused. I don't want to be neglected.
Imagine their parents grew up just yelling at them, and that's what's common to them. And so because they weren't able to beat their parents in a debate, or they weren't listened to, right, as a child, now they're seeking that out with strangers.
Yeah, and ultimately, I guess, in themselves. Yeah, all fascinating topics. Thank you guys for being up here and humoring me. It's been a good conversation.
And dope, man. I think that the focus point should be figure out what it means to be a person. That's what everybody should be doing. Are you really a person? Because person, the etymology of person is a persona. It's a mask, right? Like an actor. So are you just acting like a person? Are you just conditioned to say things? Are you a parrot?
Yeah, and in terms of, I would agree with all that, man. And in terms of trying to find an incongruence between the social norms and your biology, if that's what this is, maybe I'm mischaracterizing, whatever, but we've gone over this now for like 3-4 days. I would see that as very dark, satanic, perhaps, if you want to put that word on it. Seems very evil to try and search endlessly, skeptically, for the biological indicators of social stereotypes in children, especially, right? That's absolutely, for me, it's like a fairy tale of darkness. I don't know how else to really describe that.
Well, I don't know where you're getting this, like, searching for it and stuff like that.
Well, that's what the doctors would be doing. Like a physician is, if you're looking for a biological indicator on a social norm, you're not going to find it. No scalpel, no pharmaceutical, no therapy, no affirmation is going to get you there. You see?
I don't think that's what's happening. They're not looking for a biological indicator of the social.
Well, if that's the case, then they can cut out any biological intervention. Right? No justified biological intervention, no intervention biologically would be justified in that case, which is what I'm saying. My 12-year-old daughter comes to me, has all the reasons of thinking she's a boy. There's no reason to give her a double mastectomy. Absolutely none. There would be no reason. Give me a reason. What you're defending, right? If you are trying to defend this, is like, you have to give me a reason as a parent to give my daughter a double mastectomy. What are the reasons? What are the possible reasons? Give me one. Other than cancer or something like that. But I'm saying related to her gender identity, what would be a good medical reason to go through with that procedure if I'm a father?
It always comes down to weaponized self-unaliving.
Yeah, so you think you're going to convince me that if we don't go through this procedure, she's going to commit schmuicide. I don't believe it. Sorry, I'm going to employ skepticism. I'm going to employ skepticism, though. I think I have that right. You don't know that. There's no research or results of a surgery that show that as indicative. It's absolutely, if you want to at least steelman the position, at least say it's cutting edge research and brand new, you know? And that's what it is.
The research is limited indeed, but there is indication that the treatments of gender affirming care do reduce the.
I'm skeptical, man. I'm heavily skeptical, and I'm a voice of reason. And I think my skepticism coming from an honest, good place, pretty educated place as well. I don't claim to have authority on the topic, but I'm proudly and humbly, if those things can be said next to each other, you know, skeptical of that claim. And I stand for, you know, reason, right? Which is, if you're bringing forward a contradiction in terms to me, I'm going to point it out. There's no way around that. If you can convince me that social norms have an impact on our biology, then I'll go with the set theory. But until I get a distinction between the two terms, you can't propagandize my reason away from this, really. Or a doctor. Not saying you are trying to do that, but no media or doctor could really get me convinced, right? Through propaganda or dogma. They'd have to reason their way. Show me the set, show me the categories, show me how this is working. They can't do it. And that's scary to me.
But you would accept that a social issue can cause biological harm down the road, right?
Biological harm, yes. A social issue could cause biological harm, yeah.
Yeah, even just like
that's what this is. That's what this is, I would say. That's exactly what this is. It's a social issue causing biological harm.
Well, that's what both sides of the argument are, essentially. It's just like, I think it comes down to which is more harmful. And it seems to me that, you know, I would say letting people identify themselves and correct the social categorization misalignment is better and less harmful on
Yeah,
the
the social aspects, I'd agree. That's less harmful and that's somewhat easily correctable on an individual standard. But what's not is the biological.
Maybe they got a phone call.
Oh, sorry. Basically, you got to get me to the stage of actually being able to convince me as a father, right? Through some reason, give me a reason to give my daughter puberty blockers. Like, what scenario would cause that? I can't imagine any. Other than biological indicators like actual puberty issues and things like that, unrelated to her gender identity, then I could see it, right? But I do not understand how you could utilize gender identity to do those kinds of things.
So if it's causing them depression, isn't that like valid? Because that's like a biological issue as well, right? Like,
yeah, like, so if someone's biology is causing them depression, no, I would not intervene in their biology. No. Right?
But that's the thing here, is like sometimes that's what's best to resolve the depression. When it's
I'm skeptical of those claims because I don't even know how that would be confirmed. I don't even know how you would collect data on that result. Right? It's a self-identifying result. So you're basing your data on bias confirmation. There's no way to do a double-blind study. You're confirming the result on a self-identifying factor of the patient.
Yeah, and that's a limitation on the high bar or whatever for like hard science that you were talking about earlier, where there is that limitation of the data to where like with depression, all we really have is self-report to a degree, unless we were gonna like go interview all their friends and family and work connections and stuff to see like are they acting more depressed and stuff like that.
Yeah, but what we wouldn't want to do as a society is start cutting depressed children up in search for their depression.
That's not what we're doing.
Lobotomizing them. We're blocking their puberty. Anything related.
That's only after determining that the depression is indeed about gender.
But that doesn't relate to their puberty. Just because every teenager who goes through puberty goes through depression, right? So it's like it's very hard to parse out the difference of what you're claiming and just an average teenager. It seems to just be based on feelings, emotion. Doesn't seem to be based on, like as you just admitted, any hard science. And so for that claim, I would definitely stray away from anything related to that. I'm not gonna have surgery on my arm based on some social stigma. That's the weirdest thing for a doctor to suggest, too. Right?
I don't know if I'm beating a dead horse with this, but I would just bring up again the example of cisgender women getting breast augmentation or breast reduction surgery. Like
they're not gaining access to a different gender identity by going through those procedures. They're simply just going through a biological procedure. For them to fool themselves into thinking that now I have access to a whole different gender identity is bias confirmation. They had just as much access to every identity out there in terms of gender as they did before or after the surgery. Makes no difference.
No, they didn't.
Well,
That's
according
exactly
to them, but that's bias, right? Because actually, in reality, there's no particular set of elements in relation to a particular gender identity. They can't name one. They can't be like everyone with ears is a boy, right? There's no particular biological indicator on your gender. So it's just them being biased towards what they think a stereotypical man or woman should be, right, in relation to their culture. But that doesn't justify, basically, biological intervention. I'm so sorry to cut this short, but my phone is at 3%. And, yeah, I'm sorry. I really always want to keep these conversations going, but my phone has such limited battery.
Can I ask you a question real quick, though?
Yeah, for sure.
Relating to the gender topic.
For sure.
Are you aware
if my
of the
phone
fact
dies,
that
you guys know why.
biologically, all right, are you aware of the fact that transgender people, when their brains are studied, it's actually found that their brains look more like the opposite sex?
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah. Do we have a delay? I think we might have a bit of delay. Oh, I think it's like really
That's
bad.
probably true.
I think it's like really bad. Okay, well, yeah, I am aware of that. I have heard. It's okay, don't be sorry. I have heard of that before. The difference between male and female brain. That would basically undermine the argument here, right? If there was actually a biological indicator for gender, then it would remove the definition of social construct being. It would be a whole different analysis. So I will concede on that. If there was actually a brain difference, right, in sex or biology or gender, using those terms somewhat interchangeably, then yeah, it would not indicate what this argument indicates at all.
Okay.